Ladies, gentlemen, everyone in between, this is a Revolution, your weekly RevPro podcast here on Cromulent Wrestling. My name is George, and as always, I have my good friend, it's Dave the Mark. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. I'm enjoying my first week of the summer holidays, and feel somewhat ashamed by saying that I got to Tuesday, and by Tuesday I was like, it's bored now. Kind of have my rest. What shall I do? But it's all right. We've got a busy couple of days ahead, just doing stuff with the kids, and then we're on holiday next week, so that will keep me busy and out of trouble.
It's nice and calm and collected, I'm sure, with 3 kids on holiday. Yeah, you're going to have a nice calm time, I'm sure.
Oh yes, mate. Yeah, we had 6 kids in the house yesterday. We've got 5 kids in the house today. Just because we often will just be like have friends round. They bring all their kids round. We're pretty relaxed in our house. It's a bit like there's nothing that they can do that we can't undo. There's nothing that's precious that can't be fixed or replaced. But it does just mean like every day is like, right, let's try and get some normality back to our house at the end of the day after half a dozen kids have just kind of torn it up. But yeah, no complaints, mate. How's your week been?
Yeah, good, mate. I have tried to start getting into New Japan, as you know, the G1. So I've been spending some time, already fallen behind a little bit. But hey, to be expected. So basically, to catch up, I'm just going to watch the matches of the people that I want to watch and kind of go from that. This looks like a good match, because the completionist in me will go, no, before you start the next day, you've got to finish the days before. And the realist in me goes, no, you're never going to catch up with it all, because you're an adult with a job, and this is at a time that, yeah, exactly, it conflicts with that. So, but what I've been watching so far, really enjoyed. As I mentioned to you privately,
it is a proper marathon, the G1. Like,
yeah,
it is really, really kind of relentless in the schedule. They seem to do sort of like 2 days in one town, travel on the third day, 2 days in a town, travel 2 days in a town. I will happily send you my recommendations. You watched, am I right in saying that you watched the first 2 days? Is it just today's that you've not seen yet?
yes. I think I've watched the majority of day 2 as well. I think I've watched the majority of that one. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 matches I haven't seen yet, but yeah, I've seen the majority of both of those days. But yeah.
So we're recording Tuesday night, as is tradition, and there's a couple of matches from today which I would strongly recommend you go make sure you watch, which are Callum Newman and Zack Sabre Jr. and Gabe Kidd and Shota Umino.
Nice, excellent. I'll go and watch
those. Very Rev Pro leaning matches there. So it's not just bias. Genuinely, they were my 2 matches of the day.
Nice. Yeah, I'll give those a watch, because Callum Newman is one that I'm making sure I watch all of his matches regardless. Zack Sabre Jr. is the other one. And I think that's what you need to do with these 5 kids in your house, mate. You need to sit them down and extol the virtues of Zack Sabre Jr. onto all of them and just have them sit and watching that. Anything with Shingo in is a must watch for me as well. So they're kind of like my 3 guys. And then outside of that, I'm looking at matches. And Oleg Boltin, or Boltin Oleg, whatever way around his name is. Look, I know the guy, he doesn't have, this can sound really rude, he doesn't have a lot, like he's not like this complete package that does everything. But he's just got something, doesn't he? Like, I don't know what it is. I think it's he's from Kazakhstan, so he's not really this like big talker. I mean, I know they're not generally in Japan, but like he's just got this really raw feel to him that I can imagine him doing this, or literally being on a farm somewhere and just enjoying his life. Like, I'm already a big fan of the guy.
What's the? I'm sure that's a phrase, isn't it? Like he's not gym strong, he's farmyard strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a proper unpolished gem. I just remembered another match from today, which I can't believe I had slipped my mind. But Jeff Cobb versus Konosuke Takeshita is, if you're someone who's probably like you've not seen a ton of New Japan before, this will make you realise why we love Jeff Cobb.
Yeah,
like Jeff Cobb in New Japan, in Japan, is a different beast to anything. Like if you've seen when you've seen him do appearances in AEW, Or if you ever watched like Lucha Underground, or when he's come over for Rev Pro or Royal Quest, like he always puts in a shift. Don't get me wrong, but G1 Jeff Cobb is like a different beast, a completely different beast.
Nice. No, I'm looking forward. I'll watch that one as well, because I completely forgot when you said about the people. I was like, oh yeah, Takeshita. Yeah, like how could I forget Takeshita matches? And then Sanada in his first match against Jake Lee really impressed me. Both of them did, actually. I don't know a huge amount of Jake Lee. Know a bit of Sanada from years ago when he still had the blonde hair and the shaggy beard. And why has he got rid of all of that?
I miss it so much.
Like, literally, I don't know. This could sound really odd, but I never knew how much a hairdo and a beard can, like, get rid of those, can suck someone's charisma so much. But it just does. Like, there was something about him then that made him seem almost like superhero, anime kind of hero, kind of like just this, I don't know, just cool. And then now he's got the nice jacket, but like, there's just something missing from him. I don't know, but that's just as a casual observer of me, like watching years ago and watching now.
Yeah, so I'm like, in terms of the factions within New Japan. Shit, sorry.
That's not get. This isn't getting cut, by the way, Dave. That's not getting cut. That's staying in.
Where's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, like in terms of factions within New Japan, like LIJ have always been my guys. Ospreay kind of really like threw a cat amongst the pigeons when he formed United Empire, because like I can't not love Ospreay and I can't not love everyone who's associated with him. But in terms of like when New Japan was like pre-United Empire, when it was Suzuki-gun, Chaos, LIJ, Bullet Club, LIJ were my guys, absolutely. And I loved Sanada being one of the group, just kind of being a bit elusive. They're all just weird guys, and I love that. And like when I went to Royal Quest 2, getting to see Sanada live was amazing. He let the hair dye grow out. He shaved the beard. He formed Just Five Guys, and I just feel like he's like a completely different person now. And I miss my Sanada of old. But I know there are loads of people out there that love Just Five Guys and love that stable. There's some really cool people in it, like some real kind of like old school New Japan heroes in it. For me, it's kind of a sadness, because on one hand you've taken Sanada away from LIJ, and Suzuki-gun had just kind of all turned face, and I really liked face. Like, it's a bit of a weird thing to say, face Suzuki-gun when none of them are faces. It's just they're less like bastardy than they used to be. And like, I loved Desperado and Taichi and Zack Sabre Jr., Suzuki, Doki, like all being in the same group. I loved Kanemaru, and now he's joined the House of Torture, which makes me sad. So yeah, there's I can see like Sanada for me is one where I'm kind of learning to let go, I think is probably the best phrase.
Yeah, nice. And it's funny because whenever I hear his stable name, his faction name, I just get hungry. Like, Five Guys, I want a burger. Like, give me some. Like, it's between that and the Just at the beginning. It doesn't sound like you've got like United Empire, Bullet Club, Just Five Guys, and I know it's obviously it's a bit tongue in cheek, but yeah. But it's funny when you talk about Will Ospreay there, because I'm gonna hit you with a real hot take here, Dave. Right. And it's a hot take that not many people agree with me on. And don't worry, I'm not going to say anything ridiculous like Will Ospreay isn't a good wrestler or nothing like that, right? Nothing to do with that. Will Ospreay's theme in New Japan, was it called Bring It Down? It's the one they did the really cool like bit at the beginning. That is my favourite Will Ospreay theme ever. Over Elevated. I love Elevated. I love singing along to Elevated, but that theme is Elevated is probably my favourite theme to sing along to, like with the crowd interaction. But in terms of my actual favourite theme, that's my favourite theme. And when I when I was at 1PW, the last show that I went to in Doncaster for them, Will Ospreay was on the show that night. So they were doing, it was their show called All or Nothing, which was crowning all their new champions. So you had like 4 qualifying matches, and then the winners of each of those qualifying matches went on to the main event. And shock horror, Will Ospreay was the guy that they put the belt on. So like 6 times that night, I heard his theme. I think overall, because like they had to do bits of recuts because of the crowd and like some things happened and whatnot. So overall, 5 or 6 times I heard his theme that night. I was just like, yeah, I love this. This was a great theme, and I was gutted. I know they used it in AEW once. So I was like, oh, maybe they're going to use it here, and then they switched to Elevate, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. I remember when that happened. He put a tweet out saying, I don't know everybody in AEW yet, so whoever does the music next time, can you make sure you play Elevated, please?
Oh, well, you know what? If it's a weird thing,
tweets where it was like, I'm trying not to piss anybody off, but I also don't know how to contact the right person, so I'm just going to pop it out here.
Oh, I never saw that.
I get that, mate. I do get that, because I when I first started going to Rev Pro, he didn't have Elevated. He had that thing, and it's what I associated him with. It's what I associated him with when he beat Michael Oku in York Hall, and he was just a perfect, horrible, like a monster heel in a different kind of sense of the word. Like I always think of monster heels being like Walter or like Vader or someone who's like big and empowering, but Ospreay was just like the monster heel in the sense that you just can't beat this guy. He's just that good. He's like a level above anybody else. For me, Elevated became like, there's 3 times I think when it really sunk with me was the Copper Box last year, and it was just like seeing how happy he was to be there in front of all those people and seeing how Rev Pro had drawn such a massive crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Then All In the next night, and hearing like 80,000 people sing it and being a part of that. And then when he probably when he debuted in AEW, or at least, debuted after signing. Obviously, he'd been there before, but when he turned up after Michael Oku and High Stakes this year, when he turned up and he started this run with the Takeshita match and everything that's happened since, hearing the American crowd shouting Ospreay, Ospreay, like that was just like, it's a weird thing, isn't it? Because like I feel like I have this sense of like pride and being like, oh, I'm really proud of Will Ospreay, like and it sounds so like patronizing, because it's like, I don't know the guy, and
we had no hand in him
around the world before I'd even met him for the first time. But it is this thing about like the young British guy, and also the fact that he's an Essex lad, and I grew up in Essex, I think makes a massive part of it. So he's got that. He's like the local boy done good.
Yeah, and I think as well with Will, what it is, or certainly what I find, no matter how many times you ever speak to the guy, he's just so fucking down to earth. And I think that's a big part of it with me, that the guy, like, he's not, I mean, he's obviously the superstar, right? He is. In wrestling, he's a superstar because of what he does in the ring, who he is and what he does. But he's, as he would say, he's Billy, right? And I don't know the guy.
Yeah.
But I feel like I know the guy. And that's partially due to just, you can sense authenticity with people, right, when you speak to them. And that's what it is. I sense authenticity when I've spoken to him. And I've been shit scared going and speaking to him, because that is just me. Because I'm like, oh my God, this is Will Ospreay. Like, literally one of the best at what he does. And you just walk over and it's like, oh, you're right, mate. And then the first thing, I'm wearing my, I've got like a Kingpin t-shirt, which is the white one with the rose on it in gold, that he released a while ago. And I loved that shirt. And I thought, well, when he started looking like he was going to sign somewhere, I'm like, I better get this shirt now, because if it does go to WWE, I'm not going to be able to get it for much longer. So I bought that one, and I wore that one to it. He's like, oh, cheers for getting my merch and supporting me. It's just like, what? Like, this is really weird. Like, but yeah, it was just like that sort of kind of straight away. You're like, oh, yeah, all right, yeah, fine. Like, just sound guy, absolutely sound guy, and you could tell like just the way he chatted with people, like he is just a down to earth guy, and and I know what you mean. So that's kind of where I feel the same. I feel this weird pride in him, like feel proud that he's representing our scene, and I think as well a lot of it is because he's really like he'd put RevPro on his back to a degree as well. Like when the pandemic happened and shit could have hit the fan. I mean, look. We've spoken about before, the whole speaking out thing happened with Progress, right? So you've got one company who, to a degree, was on its arse, right? I'm not being around the bush. It was, right? They had a lot going on. And look, what's happened since then, like, the guys that are doing the stuff there are taking it in a different direction. But from, if everything that's been reported, really they've done a great job at turning that around, haven't they? Yeah.
Great recovery and fair play to them.
Absolutely. And RevPro would have suffered as well because there was just no ability to have shows and whatnot. So you had this expected hiatus from Progress because of what they were trying to sort and to build on. RevPro had to work with these empty arena shows, whatever. And Will's just like, you know what, picked it up, put it on his back. And he did a couple of Progress shows as well during the Super Strong Style 16. Still wish I didn't give my ticket away for that one because I having another Will Ospreay match on my watch list would have been great, but I was just too tired to go and watch Will compete in a 6-man tag, and I was just like, not about that. But yeah, it was Will Ospreay, great wrestler, and so proud to see him doing what he's doing. And Elevated is the perfect theme for it because, like you said, sorry, I was going off on a tangent and I was like, where am I going with this? Let's bring it back round. Seeing the crowd react the way they do to it and sing it, like, it's so weird because I almost see it as like a bit of a football chant as well. Like that's what it feels like, a proper football chant. And I'm going to give you another thing, right, which is the most fucking embarrassing story, right? When I say story, like realization I had, right? I'm a massive Will Ospreay fan, right? I, over the years, have been a big gamer. One of my favorite game series since the very first time it ever released was Assassin's Creed. Until Will mentioned it, like literally a year ago, I was like, I never even put 2 and 2 together, right? Never mind the fact that he basically wears the same outfits. Never mind the fact his move is called the Hidden Blade, the Aerial Assassin, all of that stuff. Never once did I put it together because I don't know why. Will Ospreay just didn't come across as a gamer to me. And I have no idea why, because I don't know how a gamer is supposed to come across, but he just didn't strike me as a guy that was a gamer. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes a ton more sense now. And my wife just looked at me, she was like, well, it's obvious, wasn't it? I was like, yes, in hindsight, it was obvious.
Yeah, I think it's the... I know what you mean in terms of I've never really been a gamer, but I know kind of like it's one of those things. It's like wrestling, I think, where you kind of have to work out if you're in a safe space or not before you admit to what you actually enjoy, because not because you it's just it gets long, like it gets really really long and boring having the same old conversation. You know, it's the classic kind of like, you like wrestling? Yeah. You know, it's not real, right? And it's like all this kind of like, right, we're going to have the same conversation I've had a million times before. You watch EastEnders? You know, that's not real, right? You like the Avengers films? You know, that's not real, right? Like, it's the same old stuff, but there is people like Will Ospreay kind of admitting the fact that like they love games and they love gaming series. It makes it cool for people like us to be able to stand up and say like, yeah, I like gaming too. Like, it's cool to like gaming. Again, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's just another thing that makes him such like a relatable guy. Have you watched the did you ever watch the Portsmouth School of Wrestling empty arena shows during like the Epic Encounter series during COVID?
No, I didn't. So in terms of actually watching Rev Pro, I don't ever watch Rev Pro live, like literally a couple of occasions. And then, so I'd never watched anything kind of back. And then since watching week to week, I haven't really gone back in the archives and watched all that much, kind of going not like you, where I know you've kind of gone, right, I'm going to start here and work my way through. The one thing that you'll kind of realize is Dave and I do things very differently with a lot of things. So if I'm watching a TV show, like a standalone TV show, I will start at episode 1, watch all the way through. But if I'm watching something like wrestling or I'm listening to podcasts, like I'm going back through the archives of the A Squared podcast like Dave is, I'm going, oh, I've listened to this one. Dave's going, why are you listening to this in such a weird order? And that's kind of like I am with wrestling. Like I will pick out what interests me at the time. So that's kind of like, if I have gone back into the archives, it's because I've gone, this match sounds awesome. This sounds awesome. I only just found out a couple of days ago that Pac had a match with Connor Mills. I'm like, wait, what? But I think that's because at the time, no disrespect to the guys, but that was all happening at a time when I was like, Connor Mills? Really? Like, because to me, they were guys that I weren't as familiar with. They weren't like big matches. Whereas for me now, if you go Pat versus Connor Mills, but oh, fuck yeah, give me that. I need to see. Like, that's kind of like where I was. So yeah, I'm kind of now starting to pick bits back and forth. But no, I've not gone back as far as watching the Empty Arena stuff, purely because Empty Arena wrestling anyway is one of those kind of weird things for me to kind of enjoy, but yeah, I definitely haven't been.
You know what though, like, and again, I'm a massive mark. I love Rev Pro. There's always going to be an unconscious and unintentional bias, but I genuinely believe that Rev Pro did Empty Arena shows better than anybody else, and I include WWE, AEW. Like, they managed to get the venue right, the lighting right, the whole kind of atmosphere right. Everyone who wrestled had like a second with them at ringside who just added a little bit of atmosphere, but without it being kind of like I suppose whatever the word I can't think of that is the opposite of organic, that is kind of like contrived. But the fact that, you know, the world shut down, Ospreay's on guaranteed money from New Japan, and he's turning up to the Portsmouth School of Wrestling every week, or you know, in the batches of episodes that they filmed, doing Empty Arena matches with like Callum Newman and JJ Gow, and and you're talking 2020 Callum Newman and JJ Gow, like 4 years of experience and development ago. And the way that they managed to build such high stakes to their matches in front of no people, like you've got that's when they solidified the Speed King title and the Cruiserweight title. So you've got RKJ and Michael Oku, which they have not revisited since, which I think is like astounding and deliberate as well. I feel like it's coming. And then you had like Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher had like an absolute belter of a little kind of program together, and it was just like such a good. It's that when I got to those shows in my like rewatch of everything, I was a bit like, I just have to get through the pandemic and then it will get good again. And I was completely surprised. I was like going through and being like, wow, I actually feel like it's gone up a level from 2019 to 2020.
So Dave, all this talk, actually, I didn't even plan it like this, but all this talk of New Japan and Will Ospreay leads me on nicely, actually, for me, onto something that I wanted to talk about before we talk about the big news. But first of all, Rev Pro is going to Doncaster. Global Wars is returning.
Yes.
So, you know what? I as soon as I saw that, I was massive. Yeah.
Yeah, my first feeling was absolute excitement, really, really gassed for it. Then it was absolute dread because I realised the date of it. It's my son's birthday. And then some serious like grafting has gone in for the last week to sow the seeds with my wife that maybe, just maybe, I can be a good dad and a wrestling fan in the same weekend. And I think we've got there. We've worked out a plan for my son's birthday so that he's going to have something fun after school on Friday, a party Saturday morning. I'll then bugger off up north to Doncaster for the evening, come back again that night, and we'll do something fun on the Sunday with him. But yeah, like Global Wars, I'm absolutely gassed for that. there's always like an excitement for me about going to a new city or a new town, going to a new venue. I know you're a massive fan of the Doncaster Dome, so that's got me excited as well.
Yeah, RevPro fans, there is just one thing you need to do if you want Dave to be there. When you're in that venue, just say his name and he might appear. I believe in Dave the Mark. The Doncaster Dome has so many memories for me. So, as you know, Dave, I live down South Coast, just outside of Southampton, right? So, back in 2005, or even 2004, I used to buy from this shop called One Up Games. And they were a store that did lots of wrestling merchandise and whatnot. And the guy that ran that store was a guy called Stephen Gauntley, who went on to start a company called 1PW. It's funny because I never had any problems with that store, and that was always my most trusted place. I'm going to use the word allegedly a lot, but allegedly the guy was a serious grifter. And a lot of stuff, if you want to know it more, and this goes to you, Dave, and to anyone listening, just go and search Stephen Gauntley, 1PW, on Twitter, on Google. You will see what I'm talking about. And let's just say I experienced some of those issues myself. 1PW over the years it's a bittersweet thing that as a company I've genuinely lost money being a fan of theirs. Not just with Stephen Gauntley, but with a different guy that took over and was purporting he had Shawn Michaels, and they were going to do like this dinner evening, which like proper sit down dinner thing with Shawn Michaels, and it was lined up. It was all lined up, and then something happened. But I ended up losing, I think it was about 150 quid of my own money, and then a friend who was going to come with me, he lost his money, and then he ended up falling out with me because he kind of saw it as my fault because I recommended this company, and yeah, it was all a bit weird. But it was just like, yeah, I'm not the one grifting you here, mate. But yeah, a lot of stuff. And even more recently, I bought a load of merch from them and ordered a Blu-ray. And the only thing that never arrived was the Blu-ray. And I was dealing with Stephen on DMs, and he was saying, oh, no, it's definitely been sent out. I physically put it in the post today myself. And then after everything that came out, I've heard that a lot of people didn't get their Blu-rays, and the same thing happened. They were put in the post. So me being the absolute mark I am and trusting people at face value, I was just like, oh, it's all right, mate. I'll just buy a new one when I'm at the venue. And that's what I did. I bought it twice, and yeah, realised my errors. But it was funny because I did buy a 1PW like t-shirt when they came back. They did all these logo t-shirts with everything on, and I bought one, and I was like, right, I'm going to wear that. And I never got around to wearing it, and I saw it the other day when I was doing my sorting out all my wrestling shirts and put them nicely into a nice drawer so I know where they all are, because I'm a sad old man. I found this 1PW one and just put it straight in the bin. Like, it's a company that at times has absolutely had my heart, because what it did for me is it opened me up to what wrestling can be. Right, so I mentioned earlier that when I was younger, my real only wrestling that I knew and was into was WWE, right? Because that was all we really had. And back in 2005, there wasn't much around. Like, the indie scene isn't what the indie scene is now, right? And I mean that with all due respect to the guys who are out there. But the level of talents, like having someone like a Jody Fleisch and a Johnny Storm was like a real outlier, like compared to the rest of the card. Whereas, I mean this now, but I think Jody Fleisch and Johnny Storm on a card, they wouldn't stand out in the way, even for as great as they are, they wouldn't be the standouts they were back then for the reasons they were back then. The same as Doug Williams, because talent around them is really coming up strong. And I think they would complement a really great card these days, but they were the standouts at the time. And 1PW came in and they were like, right, they hit us hard. They went, we've got Matt Hardy. So this was during when Matt Hardy was released by WWE, and everything was kind of going on. It was called, the first event was called A Twist of Fate. And it was great because, like, this was back in the day, to order your tickets, you had to call them up. So I actually spoke to Stephen Gauntley on the phone, who I think is actually only a couple of years older than me, which is crazy to think that this guy was that young. But then so was Andy Quilden. Yeah. So, like, and he was like saying to me, oh, you can get in the ring, get your photo taken with Matt, all of this. And like, we have a great conversation about it. And I still remember having that conversation walking across Waitrose car park, just around the corner from where I live now, actually. And like, at the time I think I was 20. I think it was literally half my life ago. like this was all going on, or 19 years, something like that. And yeah, it was like this whole thing. And then Matt Hardy pulled out. So you got all these indie wrestlers, like, and his main replacement was AJ Styles, right? So, and before we get into Global Wars as more, I'm just going to kind of share with you some of my stories from wrestling in Doncaster, because I can't think of another platform I'm ever going to get to tell these. And it's just so much fun. But on that show, we had AJ Styles, we had Steve Corino, we had Al Snow, which was a massive deal because Al Snow, you don't get him here. The Blue Meanie, Jerry Lynn, people like that were on that very first show. And it's like, this is cool. And I kind of like, I'm sat in my bedroom making my own little 8x10s for wrestlers to sign, which I've still got somewhere. And I didn't realise most of them charged. But I think because they saw how young I was and everything, they all signed and took pictures for free. And AJ Styles was the one I didn't want to do that with. But he still, as I mentioned last time, he took the time with me, absolutely signed stuff. So that was really great. At these shows, who else have I met there? I've met Christian Cage there, that was amazing. Like, being a huge Edge and Christian mark. I remember he was the NWA World Champion at the time, and he said he took the belt and he went, "Here, take this, it's yours." And like for me to hold it, which was like, oh my god, like this is crazy.
Such a beautiful belt as well.
It really is. Lance Storm, he was another great one. I said to him, "How much for a signature?" And he said, "I used to work WWE. You're not getting charged for a signature." I was like, well, I really respected that from him. Samoa Joe just walking around and like taking pictures with people. That was cool. I mentioned last week about Austin Aries standing up and calling someone a motherfucker because they dared take a picture of him sitting at his table. I met Harry Smith there. So Harry must have been about 18 at the time, because for their second show, they got Bret Hart in to introduce Harry. So they flew Bret in.
Oh, cool.
Did a speech in the ring. They also did like a shoot interview with him separately. I didn't go to that, but they had Bret come in. So that was the first time I ever saw Bret Hart live as well. So that was a really cool thing for me as well. So, oh my God, it's Bret Hart. Couldn't get a picture with him or anything because you had to do pay for the other stuff around it. But no one was going to Harry Smith's table. And I went over to him, got a picture with him, and I might try and post some of these up while I'm talking so people can see some of the pictures. But don't laugh at how young I look. And like people like Charlie Haas, he was there as well. Christopher Daniels. I posted on Twitter the other day, I found a picture of a very young Corey Graves with a very young referee, Andy Quilden. So that also starts my journey of kind of like with 1PW and Rev Pro, like being like involved with things that Andy, even though it's only a refereeing position, but like it was quite a nice symmetry of things there. And I didn't even realize that he was a ref there until it came up about like on the A Squared podcast. So I was like, oh, I must see if I've got one. But I think the real difference for me was like seeing this really different presentation in wrestling. And they had some of these big guys here who weren't normal indie guys, or some of them were. I mean, AJ obviously has a history with the indies, but at the time it was kind of like he was in TNA and they were really working well with TNA. So you had this real presentation where there wasn't a lot of in-ring promos. There wasn't a lot of video packages. It was match after match. And at the time I was like, oh, this feels like a bit of a slog. Like, can I not just get a couple of promos out here or some backstage segments? But that really opened my eyes to what indie wrestling was. And for the next couple of years, I was up there so much. And some of the things I've seen up there have been like crazy. I literally watched Steve Corino get hung from the balcony by Abyss, like, and dropped through these bunch of tables. And when you come, I will show you kind of like, I can literally go around this venue now and go, this is where this happened. This is where I met this. Like, I remember it all clear as day. It just has this, you know, when people talk about school and they go, I remember all this from school. This is what this was like for me. Like it's imprinted in such a massive way on me because of how old I was, everything. And it's just got this real nostalgia. But my favorite story from there, right? So I mentioned to Dave in private that whenever I go there, I've pretty much only ever sat in the same section. There was one time I sat in a different section, but for the majority, I sat in this one section. And it was usually in the front row, if you're facing the entrance. And on this one taping, was one event, they had the main event, AJ Styles challenging Jeff Jarrett for the TNA World Title, and it was recorded because I believe it actually went out on TNA Impact as well, or Explosion, one of those two shows they were putting out on. And my little brother at the time must have been about 13, right? So 12 or 13. He's 8 years younger than me, but this was the first time I'd ever taken him away to anything. And he doesn't really share my love of wrestling, but I've taken him away to events to try and get him into it. And he always had a great time coming with me, and it was always nice. Like, these things I'll remember, like about going to with him. But this one is my top moment. I want to meet Jeff Jarrett solely so I can tell him this story. But Jeff comes out, and before everything kind of really kicks off, Jeff is standing there, and like my brother's like booing him. And he turns around to my brother and he's like, "Oh yeah, you want to go one-on-one with me? You want to come fight for the title? Get in here now!" And like doing all of that. And it was just so much fun to sit there watching Jeff do this. And like my brother giving it back, like all in like a bit of fun, but like he's only 12 or 13 and Jeff really going for it. That for me is kind of like my version of your Kanji story from last week. Like, it's just something that it kind of transcends the wrestling and just gives you something. So like, and there is so much more I could add on there, I'm sure, and just thinking about it. But like all these great matches I've seen there, and people I've seen, I met some AEW talents there last year, the year before, whenever it was. I think it was last year, and met Leo Rush, met Lance Archer, Frankie Kazarian, and yeah, pretty much every big wrestler I've ever met over a period of time. The majority of them has been in there watching that. I've got to see Christian Cage win a title in there and stuff like that. So lots of amazing memories. So whenever I get the chance to go, and last year when I knew I had the chance to go back to Doncaster to see 1PW, I was like, this is amazing. But I was a bit more wise to the situation and knew at the time I didn't know a lot of the backstage kind of issues, whereas a bit more wise to it this time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take it at face value. And then as soon as I got in there, I was like, I'm a little Mark again, like 20 years old. I'm like, oh my God, like Christmas has come home, all of that stuff. So the thing that I'm most thankful for really is that it seems I never expected wrestling to ever happen at Doncaster Dome again. When you go into that venue, it is a time capsule, like literally from walking through the front door right the way into the venue itself, everything is exactly the same as it was from 2005. Like the whole thing looks exactly, it's weird to me. But it's just nostalgia for me. And the fact that Andy Quilden has managed to do a deal with that venue, and it reminds me a lot of what was said about the 1865 on the A Squared podcast. About it's a venue he sees potential in. And clearly for Andy as well, it's obviously got a bit of a nostalgic, because you could hear the way he kind of talked about it, and the fact he's taken that and gone, I know I can make money here. So I think
he loves venues with a bit of prestige and a bit of kind of notoriety to it. Like when you hear him talk about York Hall, like York Hall is always going to be a Rev Pro venue because it is synonymous with like combat sports.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I don't think it's a coincidence that of all the places up north that they could have run one of these bigger shows in, that they've gone to the Doncaster Dome, which is synonymous with wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right there. So that is just like incredible for me. So the fact that Rev Pro are doing it, it means there's no more false dawns for me, and I don't get my hopes up going, oh, is this my chance to go to it? I'm like, right, Rev Pro's doing it. I know that I trust in Andy. Like, literally trusting everything Andy does. So the fact that I can go there and know that there's going to be a next time, that gets me even more excited. So it's a 4.5 hour drive each way for me, and I don't care. Like, this is a non-negotiable one for me. Whereas I think I've said to you before, Coventry, I was like, oh, it's a couple of hours, I'm not sure. I think because this one, it's like, well, I know I'm going to need to stay overnight. I know where my hotel is. I know where it's based. It's all nice and close to the dome. Everything's good about it. I've already got it booked. Like, I know I'm going. So now I have to buy my ticket.
You've booked your hotel already, haven't you?
I've booked the hotel already because I took the wife out for anniversary meal on Saturday even, and we were just chatting, and I was like, oh yeah, like I said about it. I wasn't even saying it to try and get her to like say I can go, because me and the wife are really good. Like, because we don't have
that
the same.
That is also how marriages work, right? So anyone who's listening to us who's not married or judging us as being like under the thumb, like everything is a negotiation. Like there has to be some give and take, but especially when your guys like George and I are, where there's quite a lot of take because of wrestling. Like you've got to play your cards quite sensibly. You've got to be a good poker player.
Well, I'm going to add this, right? I'm not saying that your wife's not when I say this, because it's very different because you've got kids as well. But my wife, she is so cool about the wrestling. If I say to her, I'm going to a wrestling show, she'll joke and go, oh, another one. But she'll be taking the piss. And she'll be the one that tells me, if I'm going, I'm not sure about this one, she'll be like, book the tickets. I'm like, what? She's like, book them, go. You'll enjoy it. You don't do anything else, which makes me sound really sad. But I'm not, what she means by that is, I'm not the kind of lad that goes out drinking and getting pissed up every week and all that stuff. I have very few kind of interests that involve money. And wrestling, especially live wrestling, has been my one. So she'll go to me, go, you enjoy it. You're going to have a great time no matter what. You know that. Go. So she's the one that's been, this year has pushed me to go to pretty much all of these shows. And the other thing is, I've got her involved in it as well. So there's there's obviously shows coming up this year that she's coming to, because we've got the Copper Box show, and we've got AEW, and we've got the Riot Cabaret and all that stuff. So she's coming to all of those with me. She's coming to Summer Sizzler with me. So she's like, there's some shows she is coming to, and she's getting really involved in it as well. So it's quite nice that I'm able to share some of that with her as well, because then she understands what it is I enjoy about it. And I'm working on trying to get her into the last show at the 1865 before we go to the Copper Box. So she's doing the Copper Box and she's doing Summer Sizzler. I was like, well, you need to do the one in the middle then, because like it's going to tell the stories. And she's like, oh, I'm not sure. I think I'm just going to buy the ticket and go, well, I've got your ticket now. You're going to have to come.
Yeah.
But I have to go off on that tangent. Because we were talking about it on Saturday, and she was like, oh, you have to go. She went, Doncaster's, like, basically paraphrase, Doncaster's a special place for you when it comes to wrestling. Had to add that, come to wrestling, because who has ever said Doncaster's a special place? But at the same time, I've been to the train station, mate. I can say that. But at the same time, it's just like, oh, okay, cool. So I was like, right, I'm going to book the hotel, because if I book the hotel, that's it. It's sorted then. And in Doncaster, you've got like the one, anyone listening, if you need to book a hotel and want to get one on there quickly, Doncaster East Premier Inn. It's like literally 5 minutes down the road. So if you're looking at the road, you've got the Premier Inn, where's my camera, down here, and then Doncaster Dome up here. And on this side of the road, so they're on different side of roads. On this side of the road where the hotel is, you've got a car park, you've got a bowling alley, you've got all kinds of takeaway restaurants like Pizza Huts, Nando's, all of that stuff. And then a big, massive Asda at the end of the road, where I used to go and see wrestlers going in there back in the day and using the
their meal deals.
The photo booth, the photo printers. So they'd go in, they stick their USB in, and they would print their 8x10s at this as the photo booth thing, which is what Christopher Daniels did. So Christopher Daniels had his luggage lost when he came over. So he's decided to make up for that. And he told us all this, that to make up for it, he was going to be charging £20 for a signed 8x10 instead of £10 for a signed 8x10. And I think that might be the only time in my life I politely said no thank you. Because there was no way, even at 21 years old, I was being like, I'm not being ripped off for this. So bless him. You got to try, don't you?
We talked about it yesterday, didn't we? Like wrestling it can be. I mean, it is. Whatever way you look at it, it's a really expensive hobby, especially when you do it as much as we do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to find ways to keep the costs down. Like we were talking, literally, George and I were texting yesterday about what shows we were going to do between now and the end of the year. Like, and like George costed it up and was like, I think that's like 600 quid's worth of like shows.
Not even including the ticket prices. That's not including ticket prices. So just to add on that, for one of them, so I'm not even including my Doncaster hotel on that. And some of them are like really going like conservative on like how much I think the travel budget would be, how much I think the food budget would be, because I'm going, you know what, for this one, I might just need to keep it to some meal deals, and that needs to be what I do. Because when I go away, I like go, oh, there's a Nando's here, let's go there. And sometimes these things can go up in price, and especially where when I did this costing, that was before I was taking the wife, and I know when I take the wife, I'm not going to be able to get away on 2 meal deals in a day, and she'll be happy with that. Not saying she's high maintenance at all, she's not, but she will want to go somewhere a bit nicer for at least a main meal. So I know that, like, when I take it to one of those, so yeah, about 600 quid when you factor in all of the stuff around it, and that's not including tickets. That's just crazy when you actually add it up.
I go completely the other way. I very, very rarely sit front row for anything anymore. I sit front row for the shows where it's unallocated. I don't mind getting places early. I don't mind queuing up. I quite enjoy queuing up. It's a nice rest. It's a nice time to be social and chat to people. Like, I'm not a very social guy Monday to Friday, so at the weekends, queuing up, chatting to people about wrestling, I really enjoy it. But anything that's like York Hall, Crystal Palace, Copper Box, Doncaster Dome, like, I don't tend to go front row because it's out of my budget. Instead, I'll find what I think is like a good seat for like half that price, and then it will be driving there and back, so cheaper than trains, no hotels. Food will be like often like a homemade lunch. Anyone that's ever seen me, and I say this, I can count the number of people that have seen me eat my lunch outside the Sheffield network, and it's none of the Sheffield fans, because I get there earlier than everybody else. It's people like Zozaya and Mike DeVecchio and Golden Boy Santos and Robbie X, who have all been going to get their food, and they've literally walked past and given me a little wave while I'm standing there eating like a baguette or something. Because I'm just, it's cheap and cheerful, but I'd rather spend the money on as many shows as I can on tickets and as little on the extra stuff that goes with it. It's why generally with merch, I basically, my kids and my family know that the easiest way to keep me happy when it comes to Father's Day, birthday and Christmas is be like, here's 20 quid for a wrestling t-shirt, here's 20 quid for a wrestling t-shirt, here's 20 quid for a wrestling t-shirt. And then I'll just keep that until I go to a show where there's something that I really want. And the thing is, at every show there's a t-shirt that I want. And it's just a case of like being kind of thinking to myself, I could buy this t-shirt, or I could go to the next 229 show. I could buy this t-shirt, or I could go to the next St. Neots show. And it's little things like that which I think make a massive difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because yesterday when I was costing it all up, and I was going I was thinking, like, I'm going to just get some little Tupperware boxes. I'm just going to put some cereal in there. Like, that's kind of where I'm going now. I'm going, I can stay overnight, and instead of going for that nice breakfast in the morning, I like to go for, I could just go and get some milk and get some cereal.
So I will say I'm super, super excited for the fact that we have Global Wars this year. It's really interesting because I was chatting to some people earlier in the week because they were asking questions about like what the difference between Global Wars and Royal Quest is. And I think that's something that there is quite a noticeable difference, and it doesn't. I'm surprised that we've got Global Wars this year rather than Royal Quest, and I'm assuming it is rather than. I can't see them doing 2 shows with New Japan when effectively we've only got Global Wars happening in October. So if you're going to do another New Japan show, when's it going to be? November or December? Like very, very close together. But then I also thought about it as actually it does make sense because Royal Quest is a New Japan show that is completely under the New Japan umbrella. Doesn't even have Rev Pro like branding on it. It's just that it always involves some Rev Pro talent because they work with Andy, and Andy runs the actual event like effectively for them. And he's heavily involved in like collaborating on the card and giving like British fans a card that British fans will spend their money going to. But it is very much like a compromise between what he wants and what they want. Whereas Global Wars, one, it's a Rev Pro show that involves other companies as opposed to it being a New Japan show that involves Rev Pro. And it's not going to be exclusive to New Japan. So we know from tweets that have come out from from the company and via like Craig Armand, who works with Andy in Rev Pro, that it's going to be involve New Japan and CMLL. Therefore, it makes sense for it not to be called Royal Quest, because Royal Quest has no links to CMLL, whereas Global Wars is like, it's got quite a rich history to it as Rev Pro and New Japan, Rev Pro, New Japan and Ring of Honor, New Japan and Ring of Honor, like lots of collaboration.
Yeah.
And it's also got this history of it being like Rev Pro versus New Japan and New Japan versus Ring of Honor. And that's quite like unique. Royal Quest is very much like the two companies working together, whereas Global Wars is a bit more of like the two companies in competition with each other. So I'm really excited to see how that pans out. And I'm really excited to see what the card looks like, because an Andy Quilden card and a New Japan card are quite different in terms of like the balance of singles matches, tag matches, multi-man matches, matches with high stakes. I mean, just look at like past Global War shows and you'll be excited for this. And I think we can absolutely trust in the process that the card that we get delivered is going to be well worth the journey and the ticket price. I'm proper excited for it. I think there's going to be, I'm more excited for a Global Wars than I would be a Royal Quest. And I absolutely love the last two Royal Quest shows that I got to go to. So yeah, proper up for this, mate.
Yeah, cool. I agree with what you say there, because to me, obviously it was before, like very first started before this term was even out, but it almost feels like the forbidden door, doesn't it? Like this is the forbidden door that Rev Pro is going to be involved in it. And I know that like back when we kind of had Forbidden Door, one of the things that we kind of mused at the time was like, well, what if we tried to do a show that's like, well, what if Rev Pro were involved in Forbidden Door? But realistically, as much as I love that, you kind of going like we're going to predict 2 matches each then, right? If that. And it's going to be who's Michael Oku going to face is going to be one of them. And no disrespect, but it's not exciting to kind of, because they're not, Rev Pro wouldn't be treated as one of the main partners in that. But having something much on a much smaller scale where you've still got those partners of New Japan, CMLL, the bit that's got me, and I could be reading too much into the tweet, so I don't want people taking this as gospel, but it says New Japan, CMLL, etc. So it makes me go,
yeah.
Does that mean there's a Stardom? Could we see an AEW person? Like stuff like that, because we're going for like a bigger scale of this kind of event. But I was there at the very first Global Wars UK show that Rev Pro did. And that's the only Global Wars I've ever been to. But that was the one famously for me that I booked the ticket for, because AJ Styles versus Jushin Thunder Liger was announced for the main event, the British Heavyweight title match. And I was like, I can't miss a chance to see a Liger match live. That was just, and I was getting really scared at the time, because I don't know if you recall, but at the time NXT were talking about having Liger interface Tyler Breeze, and the rumor was it was going to be at the takeover that was the same time as this. And I was like, oh,
right, I got you.
Right. And it came up because I remember following this really closely. Liger picked Rev Pro over WWE NXT for that because his feeling was he's already committed. And I was just like, as the fan that was going, I was like, amazing. Like this is what I need. What's also really great about this for me is I would have seen at this point, so this was in the October, so in a 6 months period, I would have seen AJ Styles live twice. All right. The first time would be this match at the Rivermead Leisure Centre in Reading. And the next time after that would have been at Arlington Stadium, 100,000 odd people capacity, Dallas, Texas. Those were the two. So AJ Styles and Jushin Liger, and then AJ Styles and Chris Jericho were the 2 AJ Styles live matches I saw within 6 months of each other. So different.
From Reading to Arlington.
Yeah, and then the other ones that I've got is like between appearances was Aussie Open at the 1865, and then Aussie Open at Wembley Stadium. And I think I've seen Aussie Open 3 times, and on 2 occasions they've either walked in or walked out with tag team titles as well. But I digress. So
class.
I've got the Global Wars 1 card here. So the main reason I booked the ticket was Liger versus AJ, like I said. And then the other one was, like I said last time, I saw Will Ospreay live for the first time. I was like, oh, this kid seems quite good. He's on that show. I'm going to go and watch him. And that was literally the draw. Like, and I know there'll be some people in hindsight go, did you really think that? Well, yes, I did. I just enjoyed him. He had that same kind of raw, unpolished gem like Oleg Bolton did, where I know it's not the same style or anything, but just that I want to see what this guy does next. And there was a lot on this card that, I'll be honest, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know who the hell Naito was or Kushida was. I know who Gedo was, because back when I used to play all the wrestling simulator games back in the days, I always brought Gedo and Jado in as my tag team. Always did that. And then obviously you got Tenkoji in there. I realised this was the one show that I actually saw James Castle wrestle on as well. So
nice.
Him and Shah Samuel. So while I'm not going to claim that I was familiar with a lot of James's work, but I'm glad that I at least got to see the guy doing something that he loved doing. And that was against Bullet Club, so Gallows and Anderson.
I remember that match.
Yeah, again, Joel Redman and Mark Haskins against Tenkoji. Shinsuke Nakamura wrestled. Don't know who he wrestled against. Let's leave it at that. Yeah. You got what I'm saying. You might need to go to Puerto Rico to work that one out, or Poland. Okada versus Will Ospreay, which is now just like the famous match in the lore of Will Ospreay. So again, nuts to me that within the space of 4 months, I think it was, that I've seen Will Ospreay. I got to see Will Ospreay versus Ricochet, and I got to see Will Ospreay versus Okada. Like, perhaps the two most famous pair-ups that Will has ever had outside of maybe Kenny Omega. And while that match with Ricochet wasn't the match that got them noticed, to know that I got to see one before that, and I remember
it was
at the time,
their first ever match, I think, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. I've looked it up. They had a match in the UK a couple of years before that, or maybe even a year before that. Yeah, I can't remember who for, but I did look that up. And then, so you had that match, Tanahashi versus Big Damo. And this is what I love as well, right? That is never a match you're going to get anywhere else, right? Because unless they get Damo over in Japan, which can happen because you've seen some of these bigger guys who they've got like their presence in Japan. Like Albert was a guy who was in Japan for a while. Like, these bigger guys can do that, but outside of that, it's not a match you're going to see.
The Japanese crowds absolutely love Jonah. What is he in? What's his name in WWE?
Bronson Reed.
That's it. I couldn't think of it. But they absolutely loved Jonah when he was over there. And he they gave him a victory over Okada in the G1, like massive.
Crazy. Yeah. So these are the matches that I've seen, and I loved like the show because it really opened my eyes to what was out there. Right. The one that I really did know going into this, and again, it's a hot take o'clock with George. Shinsuke Nakamura was the guy for me. I was like, right, hopefully this is the time. And I walked away, I was like, I don't get it. I don't get why everyone likes him. Right? Now, we go literally 6 months later, and the next match I see Shinsuke Nakamura in was against Sami Zayn at NXT TakeOver. And the second his music went that time, it clicked for me. I don't know what is. Yeah. I almost had this epiphany. And even before he stepped foot in the ring, I was like, I get him now. And that whole weekend, I was at WrestleMania Access probably about 4 times overall. Basically, I was trying to meet Edge. And they did NXT tapings there. So I went and watched NXT. So I think that weekend, I watched 4 or 5 Nakamura matches live. And then my wife started getting into Shinsuke as well. So she would watch NXT with me. So that became our wrestler. So so our wedding, we did things a little bit differently, but we had these in where we had our the room where our wedding breakfast takes place. These big double doors. So I was like, right, I'm going to do something a bit different here. And I said to my mates, right, I said, when I give you a nod, just open the doors at the same time. And we had the version of Shinsuke's theme from NXT that had the little violin bit at the beginning, and I had them play that over the speakers in the room, and people were like, "What's going on here?" And my friend almost did like a ring announcence for us, and literally at the bit where the it drops. That's what they call it, isn't it? The drop.
I'm playing the theme in my head right now.
Let's go with what the kids say. The drop, where it just goes down, and then so at that point they pulled the doors open, and then it restarts back up, and we walked in. So and that was when I got her to her first live WWE show as well. So Nakamura versus someone. Well, that didn't click for me there.
Go on Rev Pro on Demand and find Nakamura versus Roderick Strong. Summer Sizzler,
I've heard
2015 or 2016. It's so good, mate. It's so good. It's one of my favourite matches on Rev Pro on Demand. He had a really good match with Zack Sabre Jr. either the year before or the year after. He did 2 Summer Sizzlers in a row, 2 years in a row, and it was Zack one year and Roddy the other year, and I just can't remember which order it goes in.
Yeah,
they're both great because obviously they are. Look at who's in the ring. But the Roderick Strong one is one of my all-time favourite Rev Pro matches.
Nice, I'll give that one a watch. But yeah, so this is kind of like, this is how much I love this card and this event. And not knowing who half these guys were, because like the things that for me was, I was like, oh, I really like that jacket that Carter's got on. Like little things like this. Or this Tanahashi guy is quite cool. He's up there doing some air guitar. He's got great hair. And like, yeah, I was judging it all on a very superficial level and stuff like that. But at the same time, it was like a bit of an opening, a bit of a way in for me to kind of appreciate this style a bit more. And while I've said to you that New Japan, I think this is a really smart way of doing it, because Royal Quest was when they had Okada, they had a prime-ish Tanahashi, and even Naito. And like I said, I'm not going to say I watch a lot, but I can clearly see age catching up with these guys, and it happens. It really does happen. And with
especially
people,
when you look at like Naito, Walker Stewart said a stat on commentary for the G1 this week. Like Naito's wrestled something like 70 matches this year already.
Yeah, and
you're like,
crazy.
Like I don't think people realise, if you don't watch New Japan, you don't realise the schedule that they do. Like it is like, it's so much more rigorous. I know that like when they're doing a 6-man or an 8-man tag, Naito's not actually doing an awful lot in those. But on the other hand, when they do a singles match, like there's very few times where they do a singles match that isn't, especially Naito, because they'll often be in the main event. Very rarely is he doing a singles match that lasts less than 20 minutes against someone who is younger, fitter, and faster than him, which is kind of pushing him to his limits.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. Like you think Royal Quest 2 years ago, from that card, we've lost Okada, we've lost Ospreay, we've lost Jay White. From the Royal Quest show last year, there's not going to be Ospreay again. There's not going to be Eddie Kingston, who was like a big draw for that. I mean, I remember the meet and greet last year, the queue for Eddie Kingston was insane.
Yeah.
Like it was basically the queue for Eddie Kingston was probably equal to the queue for everybody else added together. Nice. Bearing in mind the Naito and the Tanahashi queues were really long themselves. It's just basically you could just see everybody had bought Kingston and someone else.
Yeah.
So maybe you're doing Kingston and Naito, or Kingston and Tanahashi, or Kingston and Desperado. But like he was a massive draw to it. This year, I still feel like the G1 so far has been really, really hot. But then I also know that I'm a really invested New Japan fan, so I don't know. I'm not getting a read yet on how many kind of more casual New Japan fans are invested in it. But the inclusion of CMLL adds something, because there's loads of, CMLL and New Japan work together. That's why we get people like Titan in Best of the Super Juniors. New Japan have a good working relationship with TNA. Rev Pro have a good relationship with TNA. Hence why you've got, when New Japan were in a pickle last year, they got Kushida who has, got a TNA contract to come over and do Best of the Super Juniors. Rev Pro have obviously got TNA relationships, hence Josh Alexander coming over this year, hence Leon and Danny Luna and Subculture, like them working both companies. We've got the New Japan and AEW relationship and the Rev Pro and AEW relationship. I don't want to get like people like carried away. I don't think this is going to be all of those companies all like some massive kind of crazy like not even like a Forbidden Door 2.0, but like an even better than Forbidden Door because you've got all the companies working together. But I do think that you're going to have an even better version of Royal Quest because Andy will be like pretty much solely in charge of booking it, and there won't be the compromises of like, for example, I don't think you're going to get many 6-man tags.
Yeah,
I think you're going to get a lot of cool like singles matches and tag team matches, and the tag team matches will be between tag teams as opposed to like collections of wrestlers.
Yeah.
I think you're also going to get a much better balance between Rev Pro and New Japan wrestlers, and you'll actually get like, I mean, the 2 Royal Quests I've been to, I can't recall too many victories, if any victories, for like the Rev Pro talent. They're very much there to, I think this is one time you can use the phrase and it not be a criticism. They're there as enhancement for the guys who are there to kind of like sell the tickets. I don't think that'll be the case. And like the idea that we might get a Stardom woman to wrestle, we might get a somebody more associated with AEW or Ring of Honor. Like there's loads of potential there. One thing that, I mean, I will not hesitate to buy a ticket before they announce anything because I trust it. I trust it. I've never been let down. And I think that for those people who, maybe I'm in a more kind of blessed position to be able to afford to buy a ticket and run the risk, or I'm in a blessed position in the sense that Doncaster isn't 4.5 hours from me, it's 2.5 hours. But I think once they announce a match or two, a lot of people, any doubts that they have will be assured at that point. And from what you've said about the Doncaster Dome, like, it's not going to be a case of you need to get in there really early to get a good seat. Like, there's going to be loads of good seats available, like, kind of no matter what your budget is.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me a lot of Stevenage. Kind of, as I said to you, Dave, you've kind of got like, if you imagine the merch area in Stevenage, like 2 to 3 times the size, you've kind of got that little area there. And then there's actually another area down the hall. So when you go in the hall, it's a massive hall, which is used for concerts and everything. So that kind of gives you and then you've got, I think it's 3 tiered seat levels. So as in like 3 stands, like one here, one here, one here. So if you were looking, I know in Stevenage, you've only got the one. So where you got the sides there, you'd have one each there, and then you've got a bunch, normally about 4 or 5 rows of ringside seats on with that as well. And then an area down here where when I went last time, they had one area which was all the merch, then one area which is where they did like meet and greet photos and stuff like that. So it's all nicely spaced out in there, really nice venue for it. But yeah, I'm much the same as you. And look, I know I've waxed on about the fact that Doncaster Dome is special for me, and that's a big part of the reason I booked. That isn't the only reason I booked, right? I trust in Andy, and I am a casual New Japan guy. Like, I couldn't be more casual if I tried. And I think one of my regrets as a fan was not going to Royal Quest 2, because I thought I'd never been to Crystal Palace, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be sitting up here, because it looked like the only affordable seats for me were the ones that were high up. And I was like, and I think it was Crystal Palace.
I remember people saying like, I'm not going to go because the only seats that are available are like up in the heavens.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of like, once I got there, it was like, dude, you've missed out, because the heavens is a great view. And like, this is a much smaller space than you think it would be when you look at the seating map. Royal Quest 2 was one of my, like, there are some matches there which are some of my favourite moments. Like, Too Sweet and Jay White is something that I will always be very fond of. He's one of my favourite wrestlers in the world.
So underrated.
Do you know what? I miss him so much, because Jay White in New Japan is like a top guy.
He was. I used to watch at the time, and I loved him.
He's an upper mid card guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I miss Jay White being like the number one heel in the company. Aussie Open versus FTR obviously was incredible. Like everyone's talked about that. I mean, I'd say to death, but actually that makes it sound like an insult. And it's like you could never talk about that match enough. It was so special.
Yeah. I've still not watched it. Yeah, I need to. I like literally the fact that I didn't go there to see it. As I keep going, I'm going to watch at some point. I never have because it's. Yeah.
I've got a cool photo of Dax Harwood literally laying at my feet covered in blood. I got front row tickets. I treated myself to 2 nights of front row tickets. I think it was like 250 quid for both nights. Like 120, 125 each night. And it's one of those ones where in hindsight, I didn't need to at all. I was just kind of at that point, I didn't go to as many shows. So it's like, if I am going to go, I'm going to get a good seat. But because I'm also conscious of like, if I hadn't sat front row, I wouldn't have two-sweeted Jay White. I wouldn't have like high-fived Tanahashi. I wouldn't have had Dax Harwood bleeding at my feet.
Yeah. Yeah, I had that with WWE years ago where it was a SmackDown taping and I bought a ticket which was on the ramp. And I think I was like right next to the ramp, 2 or 3 rows in. And like all these guys come past, like Randy Orton, Sheamus, just like high-fived me on the way past. It was like, it's so cool, isn't it? And yeah, I love stuff like that. And like you said, sometimes the money is worth it for the right events because you get those memories. And that's why, for me, Summer Sizzler, I'm just like, something feels big here. I'm going to this is the one I'm going to take the punt on and see if it's worth it. And then I think next time I go to York Hall, for instance, I'm going to go and sit up in the balcony because I want to see what it's like up there because that seems much more reasonable in price. And yeah, so
it's ridiculously like good in price.
Yeah.
I did it for Fantastica Mania only because I bought tickets later than I normally would. I hesitated quite a lot on Fantastica Mania. I wanted to see what the card was because I thought that it was. I don't watch a lot of CMLL, so I wasn't it's not like New Japan. New Japan, like I'm as excited to see the New Japan guys as I am the Rev Pro guys. Whereas for CMLL, it was like I want to see the Rev Pro guys and the CMLL guys will be a bonus. And then obviously like the CMLL guys, we had like Mystico, we had Stephanie Vakua. So it was like, okay, this is extra cool. So I bought my tickets. And because I was doing both shows and I was a bit skint and I just thought, you know what, I'll do the balcony. I can't get my preferred spot on the aisle, so I'll do the balcony. And I loved it. Yeah. Like the atmosphere was electric up there and you've got this incredible, like completely uninterrupted view of the ring. And it's first come, first serve. So as long as you don't mind kind of like queuing, you can take your preferred spot. And I must say, for the I didn't queue for that long, and we got like pretty much first pick of where we sat. Nice. So it's not like it was that competitive either.
Yeah, nice.
However, before we get to Summer Sizzler, we have a massive show this Sunday, which we probably should talk about.
Is something big happening? Like, is there a 9-match card happening? Like
a 9-match card? Like, I mean, firstly, I was thinking about this. I have not. So in 2022, 2023, 2024, pretty much of going to most now to pretty much all Rev Pro shows. I've not seen a 9-match card outside of York Hall. No, not even including York Hall. I've not seen a 9-match card pretty much anywhere except the anniversary show last year and the like high stakes.
Yeah.
I think that had 9 matches at Crystal Palace earlier this year. But like York Hall has 8 matches. The 229 and everywhere that's on the circuit is sort of like 7 or 8 matches. So 9 matches is very, very interesting to me. It also makes me think that at least one of those matches is going to be very short.
Yeah.
I wonder if Connor Mills is going to destroy Dynamite Lee Dawson.
So that's my thought as well, and my thought is that plays into the type of match I think we're going to get with him and Ethan Allen.
Yes, yeah. So they had him and Dawson had a 10-minute match in the 229 last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very much like a contenders match where the contender got some like good hope spots in. I wonder if Mills is just going to destroy him and basically have him not be able to walk out of the building as a kind of, this is what I did to Ethan Allen, this is what I'm going to do to Ethan Allen. And where they place the Mills match and the Ethan Allen like injury update, I think will be really interesting. I think that'll be quite
I'm hoping I'm right. I think the Ethan Allen injury update is all a nice little work, and that they're going to confirm their match at the Copper Box. I'm not even kind of contemplating the fact that it might not be that, and it might be him announcing that he's injured. That would be devastating for him more than anyone.
So, I mean, are you on the same page as me? What do you think about the whole Ethan Allen health update?
Yeah, I won't lie, I wasn't sure when it first came, and I think this is one of those ones where they're really playing into work, like using real life, and they're putting on real life emotions here, which fair play to them. If that is what is happening here, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't a work, but I'm hopeful that the way they're building it now means it is a work, because I just can't see them doing everything they're doing if it was like, I'm not gonna like kind of, I don't know what the right way of saying it is, but it just feels like it would be not wrong, but it wouldn't be the right way for them to go about it if he really was unable. Like, I think that is fine. It is what it is, right? I'm never going to criticize if that's the way they want to do it, but it does feel like they'd go a very different route with it if it was a real injury. And like the whole thing about Mills, like Mills was the one that announced it as well, right? And I don't think they'd have Mills do that if that was real, because you're getting heat on the guy, but why you would wait until they've had the chance to announce it and then Mills do it? And I think they're playing a very fine line with us, which I appreciate. I like, because it keeps you guessing. I think what it does is it makes Ethan Allen even more of a bigger babyface if he is going into the match. So I think we're gonna. What I think we're gonna get something like, I've not been cleared to wrestle or something like that, but I can fight. And I think you're gonna see something a bit more scrappy. I don't think at first I thought, we're gonna get like a technical kind of match. But we've got Zack Sabre Jr. versus Hechicero. From what I heard about their match they had in CMLL, that was a great technical match. And this is a card that's going to have many different flavors on when we get to the Copper Box. Do we need two like really great technical matches? Like in that sense, is that a bit much? And so that's why I think we're going to go here. I think they're going to have Dynamite Lee Dawson's going to get destroyed by Mills. But Mills is going to do it in either a very technical way, but also a violent way, and that's where it's going. I think that's where it's going to lead into Ethan Allen announcing he's available, but not in a technical kind of match, in a bit more maybe a street fight or something, or no holds barred, maybe.
I feel like Mills and Allen will, no matter what match they have, it will have a real like technical pedigree to it, but it will be very technically different to Hechicero and Zack Sabre Jr. Like they're very much like technical purists, and it's almost like a game of cat and mouse. Whereas Mills and Ethan strike me more as wrestlers who are very technically gifted, but they do it to hurt their opponent, and they do it like you know. I use the phrase quite a lot, but they're both like piss and vinegar wrestlers. And like that would be, even if they say it's going to be like a fight, or even if it was like a no holds barred or a street fight, I still think there'd be loads of technical stuff in it, because that's how Mills is going to hurt Ethan Allen, by taking his knees away again. Yeah, I'm really excited for it. my hope, like if everything comes up Marsham, then we would get Luke and Oku in the main event of the Copper Box with Ethan and Connor as the semi-main. I feel like that spot before it, which was the spot that Trent and Oku had last year.
Yeah,
I'd really, really like to see that. And then JJ and Ishii can take they can either take the spot that the women's match had, or they can take the spot that Ishii and Jacobs had. So yeah, I'm well up for that. You got something that you were hoping for. You talked last week about True and Lacey versus Sunshine Machine.
Yeah,
and then
the prophecy.
Like the next day.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got Andy Crawdon's number.
Yeah. We text back and forth. I was like, Andy, come on, can we just get this done? But yeah, as I messaged to you, Dave, the prophecy has been fulfilled or will be fulfilled. Yeah, amazing.
Do you see the story ending in Coventry, or do you see it going further?
This is interesting to me because everyone's talking about the story ending. I don't see the story ending with them splitting up. I don't. I think this is the next, like, the end of this chapter of the story. And I know, again, that's something that Andy's really keen on, is chapters of stories. I think that I don't know, honestly. And I think that sounds like such a cop-out, doesn't it?
But absolute no, I love it.
If it doesn't...
They've done it so well because of the fact that it's not predictable.
Yeah, that's it.
And the fact that we're not both just sitting here now saying, Sunshine Machine are going to win that, obviously, because they're going to wrestle GYV at the Copper Box. That's what we get into. Like, in a lot of other companies, that would be our conversation. But actually, our conversation here is, I don't know where this story goes, because there's 2 or 3 different ways it could go, which are equally interesting. And as we've both said before, at any moment, I feel like the story could just end, because if it ends with Sunshine Machine losing, if it ends with Sunshine Machine losing and then there being a bit of heat from one side towards the other, in which case, people have talked about a TK Cooper heel turn, like that could happen on any show.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. That's what I like. And I'm sure on Sunday I will be feeling anxious again. And of course, the Sunshine Machine scarf will be with me.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think you're right. Like, that's why we'd love it, is because, look, and I've said it numerous times about what they, for me as a tag team, but I'm still invested. And that's a great sign of the storytelling, not just from the booking side, but from the team themselves, right? They've got me invested. And I'm not like this guy who's invested because I'm going, I want to see them break up. I don't want to, like, they just don't do it for me as a team. But I still think that story is there. They grab me and I go, is this going to be the moment that it ends? Is this going to be, are they going to carry this on? And I want to see what happens with them afterwards as well. And for me, the most boring outcome that can come out of this is them winning the tag team titles. Like, it really is, right? If they win the tag team titles and carry on.
I still think even if they were to win the tag titles, I feel like the tension between TK and Chuck has been there for 2 years. Literally, I remember sitting in St. Neots over 2 years ago when Chuck and TK both wrestled a Shitwolf each from Lycos Gym, and I can't even remember what specifically it was that happened on that card. But I remember for the first time, I think it was only my second ever Rev Pro show. I remember sitting there thinking, there's a bit of tension there. So I don't know when they first started telling the story of there being tension, but it has been there in 2022, in 2023, in 2024. And at some point, even if it is a case of they win the tag titles and then it's not the world's shortest run and they lose them, I feel like at some point Sunshine Machine are going to implode. It's fascinating, but it's also something that they have me in such a spot as a fan that I don't ever want to see. But I also know that from an individual point of view, they're both so good. I would enjoy whatever they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it's like it's the whole Chekhov's gun thing of storytelling. Like you introduce it, you kind of have to pull the trigger, don't you, to see what happens. And I could see loads of scenarios. I could see them losing to True and Lacey. And I think for me, True and Lacey are the perfect team to do it because the heat that they would get from. Yeah, and I think
much heat.
I mean, look, let's be honest. The guys don't need a hand in getting heat, right? They are heat magnets, right? They know how to do it. But giving them this big scalp as well, like they are the ones that ended Sunshine Machine, that would be huge for them. And that really, like, they're already, I'd say, like, if you look at the tag team rankings, you say they're like mid-card, like middle of the pack, like a good spot. Like, that's where they are. They've come in tag league, started to get themselves over. Everyone knows when they're in there, it's like, right, we're going to get a good match here because these guys are very good at what they do. And then they can get that big spot by taking out a team like Sunshine Machine. So I would not be surprised at all. And especially, again, since reading on his tweets, Craig Arman said that they are looking to make Coventry as big as York Hall. So what's bigger than having like a match like that and like go, Coventry is a must-see place. You need to come here and see this stuff. Like, so yeah, I could see either happening, and it's a testament to the booking, it's testament to the guys involved in this story that I'm even thinking of this. So yeah, that is going to be a great match, I think. Dave, you mentioned earlier about piss and vinegar wrestlers. How are you feeling about Chris Ridgway versus RKJ?
I knew you were going to do that. The minute you said you mentioned piss and vinegar wrestlers, I was like, he's going to talk about Ridgway because Ridgway is an absolute piss and vinegar wrestler. Yeah, I'm well up for this, mate. Well up for it. It's one of those matches, I can't remember when it was announced, but it feels like a lot was announced already before this match dropped. And it was just one of those ones where it was just like, you're literally now just adding cherries and sprinkles to this beautiful cake that you've already made for me. I'm really interested from a like character perspective because like RKJ's been leaning into his heel side whilst like he's basically with RKJ it feels like he can flip a coin and he'll have a full-blown heel turn or could go full babyface turn. And at the moment he's balancing it like that kind of tweener position like really, really well. He's surely going to be the one that the fans are cheering for against Ridgway because Ridgway is, like you said earlier, like a heat magnet. So I'm interested. I'm intrigued to see how that plays out. In terms of like the wrestling in the ring, this match has me super excited on the same sort of level as Robbie X and Zozaya has me excited because I love Ridgway's technical wrestling. RKJ is a real underrated technical wrestler. Absolutely. Like you watch his match with Zack Sabre Jr. at the Copper Box last year, like he held his own brilliantly. He's one of those guys who's just like, he's the twat at school that was like good at everything. Good at everything and good looking. And you're just like, you're just not, mate. It's not a fair playing field for the rest of us who are just like, you know, good at one thing or not even good at anything. But he, like, I feel like this match is really interesting. And I also feel like RKJ and what he's doing at the Copper Box, we've only got a couple of chances now to find out.
I think it's,
in Coventry, at Summer Sizzler, in Southampton, but you are leaving it really late to tell us what RKJ is doing if you leave it till Southampton. Or you just drop a match graphic in between. But if you're going to drop a match graphic in between, why wait till now? That could have come out anytime. So I feel like something tells me we're going to find out this Sunday what RKJ is doing at the Copper Box. I have said it numerous times. I'm assuming it's Gabe Kidd. They set it up at Fantastica Mania. Gabe is already working in London on the day of the Copper Box. He's working the All Caps show between the three promotions that are collaborating.
Interesting.
So he's obviously in the country. It's obviously, I can't believe that. No disrespect to those guys whatsoever. I would imagine if he's come over to the UK, like interrupt because it's in the middle of his G1. So I can't imagine he's coming over from the UK to just work a show
Yeah.
for a company that's filling in taking advantage of All In Weekend. I imagine he's coming and working a couple of shows, in which case, when has Gabe Kidd missed a big Rev Pro show unless he's been injured? Like very, very rarely. So yeah, Gabe versus RKJ, like that has show stealing potential.
It really does. And yeah, and this match on Sunday, I think, is in contention for potentially best match of the night. And I think there's a number of matches here that are up for that as well. And that's what I like about looking at this card, where I'm like, oh, this is... And the only reason I've not got to come to this show, there was two. I like a front row seat, right? I'm not going to lie. When it comes to the bigger events, I can deal with not having a front row seat because, like you said, the price gets a bit higher, a bit out of my range. But when it's these smaller shows, I like having a front row seat. And especially I'm going to travel to Coventry for it. And there was no front row tickets available. And I was like, And then
I'm not front row.
I was about to buy it. And then I think the Summer Sizzler news came out. I was like, no, I'm just going to keep my funds for that instead. Because I knew the wife would want to come to that one with me. So we've plumped for front row there. Like, that's what we've done. But looking at this one, we're going to be enjoying this one on screen because there's a lot of matches that have that potential. I think this weekend has to be the weekend the RKJ's match gets dropped. I think it has to be.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at like the top guys of Rev Pro, it's OKU and Jacobs. Then that next line under, and I'm specifically talking on the men's side only here, not tag teams, not women's, men's singles. Once you've got those guys, it's Robbie X, who we know is not going to be in the country.
Yep.
It's RKJ, and just under that, maybe is Mills and Zozaya, right? That's kind of how I see the hierarchy. Obviously, Oku and Jacobs main event. Robbie X isn't here. Mills has a match lined up. Zozaya, I think you can get away with announcing dream match type match for him, right? Like, you don't know what he's going to be doing, but you can just... I think he's someone you can get away with.
I've got a match for
graphic.
Zozaya versus Dijak.
Oh, that would be good. Yeah. So, and there you go. That's something you could set up.
Could we see Oku versus Dijak, main event Coventry, Dijak take liberties with Oku after the match, Zozaya come out and make the save?
Absolutely, we
sets up either a Summer Sizzler match or it sets up an anniversary show match, because I feel like with Zozaya, you don't need a feud. You don't need like a lot. Not every match on the anniversary card needs a story going into it. But there's no story with Hechicero and Zack Sabre Jr. You're just taking two of the best wrestlers in the world and putting them in the ring together.
Absolutely.
Saying, like, here's 15 minutes, go out and impress people.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like Zozaya is absolutely perfect for that. Give him someone where you look at it and you think, oh, that's going to be good. That's going to be interesting and exciting. And there is, we could list off 100 names where you would be excited to watch them wrestle Zozaya, because he is phenomenal. And anyone that he's in the ring with, you just need someone where he can have chemistry with them. Dijak would be great for that. It kind of naturally brings us to those two matches, Robbie X and Zozaya, and Dijak and Michael Oku. I listened to the Dijak and Chris Van Vliet episode yesterday.
Okay.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. There's something that he said that made me that made my ears prick up, and maybe I read too much into things. But he talks about when he said that when you've got your 3 months to not compete, he said it's actually like you're still getting paid, and indie companies tend to book 3 months in advance. So he said you can basically use that 3 months to get all your dates booked up and still get paid. Where he said because his contract ran out, he wasn't released. His contract expired. He wasn't getting paid. He's not getting paid by WWE anymore, and most of the stuff he's booking for indie dates are in like September and October. But he said that he's been fortunate that a couple of companies and a couple of people that he knows well have rearranged things to help him out. And it made me think about how he has a relationship with Andy Quilden, how he's booked for Rev Pro in Coventry, and how Rev Pro moved the 1865 to make way for Summer Sizzler. Just made me think maybe, I will not be surprised at all if Dijak's not just here for a short time, but he's here for a good time. And we're going to see him, work a few shows between now and...
That would be nice.
And and the anniversary show. It also got me thinking: Does Dijak beat Oku? He's not wrestling for the championship.
Oh, I just presumed it was a
he
title
beat-
match.
Yeah, it's interesting. I immediately thought, oh, brilliant! Like Oku's going to get another big name victory,
Yeah,
like the Ogogo match, where there was
yeah,
a lot of people where it's like, Ogogo doesn't lose. So if Oku beats Ogogo, that's massive, and that's exactly what he did. But do they do the Zozaya in Barcelona? Does Dijak beat Oku in Coventry to set up a rematch at Summer Sizzler,
Ooh,
which Oku beats Dijak in Summer Sizzler?
yeah,
That's it's definitely a big enough match with two great wrestlers who I trust to be able to put on two matches in a short sequence of time without people feeling like, oh, we're getting this match. We literally just had it and now we're getting it again. That's a bit of a letdown. I don't think it would get that reaction. I think people would be really interested. So again, like, that's such a bloody mark, but they've booked a match where I'm going to be on the edge of my seat for the whole thing because Oku, 100%. There's a lot of reason why you would say Oku has to win this match. It's really important for him. It's really important to the Luke Jacobs match. It's really important to the pedigree of his title reign for him not to lose many matches. It's really important for them to show the importance of the Oku and Jacobs match by having it protected as the main event of the anniversary show and there be no question marks over it. And then on the other hand, but if Dijak won, you've got a main event for the Summer Sizzler lined up. Mm-hmm. You've got a little bit of seed of doubt because if Dijak wins the title, he'll be the one to face Luke Jacobs. Like it's enough there. There's enough there to have me sitting on the edge of my seat, like falling for every finish, every 2.9 count in the main event of Sunday. And I'm even more excited for it now than I was when it was first announced, now that I know that Summer Sizzler's coming as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there's a number of things, like I said, because I just presumed it was for the title. And I'm looking at a graphic here. And of course, there's nothing that suggests it's for the title. It's just because it's Oku and he's got the belt and the pitch. And you kind of go, oh, yeah, naturally it's for the title. But yeah, that's very conspicuous by its absence.
Maybe Oku comes out and says, like, do you know what? This is for the belt because I'm a fighting champion. Or maybe Dijak comes out and says, like, if you were a fighting champion, you'd put your championship on the belt, and Oku like falls for it and does it. Like, maybe they'll go down that route, but
yeah, possibly.
I feel like it's too big a match for it not to have championship, like the championship on the line. But at the same time, I also trust that they've got the position where they can turn around and say, no, Luke Jacobs is the number one contender. No one's getting a title shot for Luke Jacobs, and it is confirmed Michael Oku. We put the match graphic out, and we've confirmed it for the Copper Box. So there's arguments that make it like reasonably justifiable in every possible outcome. And it's no matter what way they book it, they can justify it.
Yeah, I could see a scenario where Luke Jacobs interrupts in the match. And then Zozaya comes out for the save, and then the match at Summer Sizzler is Zozaya and Oku versus Jacobs and Dijak as a tag match, that could then lead into Dijak versus Zozaya for the Copper Box. And this is what we mean with.
That doesn't even need to headline Summer Sizzler, does it?
No, it doesn't.
That could be the semi-main, and your main event could be a big match like ones we've speculated on before.
Yeah, and that's what I think Summer Sizzler is going to be. Summer Sizzler is going to be this big match and one or two extra imports to really round it out. I think Dijak will be perfect for that. So, and the fact that I'm just sitting here on the fly going, oh, I could see this route. This makes logical sense. We could be way off, like we say.
100%.
But what is really great about the way they do things is there's all these little threads and directions where we can go, this story would make sense if we went down that route. And that's what I love about RevPro. Booking makes sense. And sometimes, not every match, as you say, needs that big story, right? If I'm watching AEW, right, I'm fine every now and again with big banger matches, but to me, they have no excuse because they have 3 weekly shows they can build stories out on. And I don't need stories to always be intricate, like massive cinema, if you will. But I just want my matches to make sense why they're on that TV. I kind of see these shows as very much like, well, to me, the story is this wrestler's being paid to be a wrestler, this wrestler's being paid to be a wrestler, and a booker would put 2 people together. Like, there doesn't need to be more story on a weekly show for me, right? But when it comes to the big events, when you've got a company like RevPro who can't rely on a fixed roster for a long period of time, and perhaps this might be the most fixed roster I've seen in RevPro of such high level quality in a long time, where they can rely on this, that I think they can get away with that a bit and have more stories. And I know there was a lot of stories going to Copperbox last year, but it feels like there's more stories going in this year, especially amongst the British talent. So. And I think that this story could go down so many different routes. And like you said, this doesn't need to be the main event. Absolutely doesn't need to be the main event of Copperbox. But I'm really excited for this match. And the other reason I hope that Dijak is there is because that was the one that I really want. I want to see Dijak live. Because again, when we watched NXT, he was another one that me and the missus really, really liked. And she was a big Dijak fan, massive Dijak fan. And if he comes to Summer Sizzler, that's one that I know she will really like. The amount of times that she'll just randomly, even now, just go feast your eyes and stuff like that. Just pop out with his, like, she is a little mark with things like that. You wouldn't believe it, but Love she that. Will do stuff like that. And like I really want that just as much for that as I do for it being a great show. But so what else have we got on the card then, Dave? I'm just having a quick look here. I don't think I have all of the matches in front of me.
That's one which I'm very
didn't actually,
for.
Yeah, obviously. I mean,
I think Zozaya win for me is what I predict will happen, and is what I think probably like should happen. I think we keep Zozaya hot because whoever comes out of the anniversary show with the belt, Zozaya is someone that can immediately go into a program with them again, because
absolutely
he's got the victory over Michael Oku, last person to pin him. I know he's had one chance, but he can easily in storyline be like, I've now come to England, I've proved myself. I'm ready to wrestle my English leg of what will then be a trilogy. Again, now that I feel like part of the RevPro community and the roster, and then obviously he beat Luke Jacobs in Southampton, so that speaks for itself. I think this match will be excellent. Obviously, of course, it's Zozaya and Robbie X. I'm just trying to think of all the Zozaya matches that we have seen, because we've spoken a lot about how every card that he's on, he is a standout.
He's the human cheat code.
100%. And I can't think of a match he's had with a Robbie X, with an out and out high flying cruiserweight. I know we saw him in the 229 with Leon, and Leon's got the speed that Robbie X has got, but Leon's also got a lot of power and explosivity that I would say Leon is more like an Osprey than an out and out high flyer. He's like a hybrid. So I'm really interested to see. I love watching wrestlers, like my favorite wrestlers, wrestle different types of wrestler. And both Robbie X and Zozaya are 2 of my favourites. So I'm really, really up for this.
I think for this match, and I was just, as I was looking at the graphics, like, what kind of match do I think we're getting here? Because Zozaya can adapt to his opponent, great. I think we get a match much more akin to Robbie X versus Kushida. Like, a bit more in that sort of... That's where I think we go with this. I think you'll see stretches where Zozaya will match Robbie's style. And then I think you'll see them do that a bit more. Because I think with someone who's got, like, such a big height advantage on Robbie, but he's not a powerhouse. Like, he's got power in his game. Obviously, he showed that, but he's not a power wrestler.
He's a big guy.
He's a big guy.
I think people forget that.
Yeah, he's massive.
He's like 6'3".
Yeah, 6'3", 6'4". Yeah, something around those. Yeah, he's a massive guy, which is way taller than me. But he's this big guy, but also because he's not big built, that deceives people, I think, because people don't see this massively. They see a strongly built guy, but they don't see the guy with all the muscles you normally think of for like a 6'3" kind of guy, do you? So like, He's still quite a lean guy. He can move really well. But I think, with that sort of mat-based style that he's got in his locker, I think that's what you see. You see a bit more of a technical side come out from Robbie.
Yeah.
Like the Kushida match that will kind of start to build into it. I don't see Zozaya losing this match because we're coming up to Copper Box season. Unless the match at Summer Sizzler.
One scenario.
Yeah, go for it.
One scenario where Robbie could win. What if the main event of Summer Sizzler is Robbie X versus Ricochet?
That was where my mind was going. I was going to say, unless they've got that coming up, but yeah.
I've said before about how my first thought for Summer Sizzler was Ricochet because of the fact that they've publicly said that Summer Sizzler is a reaction to something that has occurred in the wider wrestling world recently. It's an opportunity to do something that they want to do, which was never part of the plan. So that made me think about who's recently become available that has Rev Pro history, blah, 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 Ricochet. If you're going to have Ricochet at Summer Sizzler, he needs to go into a match which he is going to win. He needs to go into a high-profile match that's going to be like a celebration of Ricochet.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anyone in the world that I think like Ricochet versus Leon Slater, Ricochet versus Robbie X. They're your two matches. I think it's the same with Mustafa Ali, wasn't it? When Mustafa Ali came, it was everyone wants to see Leon Slater or Robbie X. Progress booked Leon Slater, Rev Pro booked Robbie X. So I feel like that would be perfect. And we know that Robbie's not available for the Copper Box because he's wrestling for CMLL. Him going out on his back in the UK to work in CMLL works perfectly fine. And we've talked about it before. Like Robbie's win-loss record isn't excellent like a lot of the other wrestlers, but he doesn't need it to be. He's over all the time, regardless of win, lose or draw. He is a wrestler who is often the underdog in the matches that he's in because he's got a smaller frame. He's of his wrestling style. It works perfectly. Like there's no. I'm not one of these people. I hear it sometimes when people are like, "Oh, Robbie's lost again." Like it's fine. I'm fine with it. Absolutely fine with it. I think some guys are excellent at taking defeats.
Yeah.
And some people really struggle when they take defeats. They lose their aura, and it's really hard to book them again. So Robbie is. I think that's why he's such a valuable asset to Rev Pro. So yeah, Robbie versus Ricochet, and then Ricochet afterwards can announce himself for the scramble match at the Copper Box. And chatting to a friend this week who said, do you think Ricochet would be it's not a big enough platform for him to be in the scramble match, and that if he's going to be at the anniversary show, he's going to be in a big singles match. Maybe he challenges someone for a singles match afterwards, or maybe he's in the scramble match because he's also going to do something at All In. And therefore, being one part of a multi-man match protects him for his bigger crowd, bigger audience, bigger spotlight at All In. Maybe I'm completely wrong with all of it, and afterwards people can turn around and be like, "What an idiot! You thought Ricochet was turning up at Rev Pro for Summer Sizzler, and it wasn't. It was this instead." But I do trust the process that if it turns out, it wasn't Ricochet, it was so and so instead. It's never going to be like it wasn't Ricochet. No, instead it was insert name here of someone that people don't like or don't appreciate or don't think is as good as Ricochet is. So again, I've actually kind of talked myself into thinking I was 90% sure Zozaya would win this match. And now I'm down to like 60-40 because there's storylines for each of them depending on what their angle is coming out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is it. I think if Robbie X wins this match, I think it screams Summer Sizzler main event. Like to me, that's what it has to be because, like we said,
he's Robbie to be in a main event as well.
Yeah, he deserves it. And I think that knowing Copper Box is coming up and knowing he's not going to be there, there is no reason to have Robbie X win. On paper to me, right? It doesn't make sense when you're building to your biggest show. And this is just me thinking, and again, I'm not a wrestling booker, so what do I know? But to me, just as a fan, it makes sense. Zozaya is going to be at Copper Box, we imagine. We could only assume. I can't think why he wouldn't be there for any reason. So it makes sense, him winning, going towards those shows.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was much the same as you. I was very much like Zozaya's winning this. And actually, as we're sort of sounding it out and talking about it, and for what it's worth, I don't think Will versus Ricochet happens at All In. I don't. I honestly do believe that All In, the main event is going to be Will Ospreay defeating MJF for the international title. I've said that all along. I've said that weeks before they even had their title match. That's what I think it's going to be. So, could I see Ricochet?
Maybe they do. Do you remember last year at All In, they had the panning to the crowd and, oh, look, there's Mercedes Moné in the crowd.
Something like that.
It was a little bit. It was a little bit like the old NXT takeover. Like, oh look, there's Keith Lee. Oh look, there's Ricochet. Oh look, there's you know, Shinsuke Nakamura. I can't remember which wrestlers they did it with and which they didn't. But like, I wonder if they'll do that again and be like, hand to the crowd, and there's Ricochet, and there's your confirmation that Ricochet is all elite.
Yeah, or
I
could even see them doing like a casino ladder match or something like that, where they have a Joker and Ricochet's the Joker or something like that. So,
absolutely,
if they did something like that, I'm kind of like, well, then if Ricochet's in a match like that and does a multi-man there, could he just do a single? Like, there's all these kind of things, and we're speculating as if it's going to be Ricochet. Like we said, it could be Ricochet and someone else. Like, we don't know what Summer Sizzler is going to be. And
I had a friend slide into my DMs the other day and just drop a few names. And they said, did you know that in the UK on the weekend of Summer Sizzler, Nick Nemeth, Trevor Lee, and
Speedball Mike Bailey.
Speedball Mike Bailey.
Yeah.
All three of those wrestlers are in the UK the weekend of Summer Sizzler. So, you know, maybe it's not Ricochet, but maybe it's one of those guys. And I genuinely think that, like, all of those wrestlers are on a par in terms of how much they will appeal to people. And they might not appeal to everybody the same way. Like, there might be people who are like, oh, I would personally much rather see A than B. But then there'll be somebody else that would rather see B than A. So, you know,
absolutely,
you're not going to please, you can please everybody, but you're not going to please everybody to the same degree.
Yeah. So the point and thank you for reminding me, because I had it in my head just 2 minutes ago. And when we did our recording last Tuesday, then when we did our following recording, I wanted to say this both times and completely forgotten afterwards. Like, shit, I should have said this. I think Speedball Mike Bailey is going to be on the card at Summer Sizzler, regardless of who the main event is. I thought that before I even remembered that he was in the country, because I think I heard that a couple of weeks ago because they're here with OTT. I think he's going to be on the card. Whether it's against
versus Zozaya.
Well, I don't think that would be the.
There's a cheat code.
That would be great.
There's a cheat code if ever you wanted one.
I don't think that would be the route they'd go with. I think Speedball could be one of the names in the cruiserweight title scramble. That's where I think. So I'm kind of saying that I think he goes on. He's going to be in the qualifier match at Summer Sizzler, and he's going to go on there. But again, we could be completely wrong. But Dave, you know what I'm going to do? Hopefully,
but it's fun to speculate, isn't it?
Yeah. So when Rev Pro questions come around on Friday, I'm going to try and see if I can pin Andy down for a time that he's going to release this card. And if it's in the evening, if it's around 7 o'clock or something like that, basically, if he's not just to get, it'll be some point during the day. If it's at least from 6 o'clock onwards and a guaranteed time, I think what I might do, I'm going to try and go live. So anyone that wants to watch, go and have a look on YouTube. I'll put something up if Andy confirms it and put a link to the live that you can go and join before it starts. But I'll maybe stick it up 5 minutes before the card is due to drop. And I'll sit here and do a live reaction to it. I know you won't be able to join, but I'll be able to sit here and do a live reaction.
I will be swimming in the sea.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Completely unaware of everything that is happening around me, because one thing I am looking forward to next week is, so I made the commitment with like the DaveTheMark.com stuff. There's like, it's daily content, and I will always maintain that.
Mm-hmm.
So next week you will still get your 10 takeaways from Coventry. You'll get your heroes and villains. You'll get all that stuff. I've got my interview of Rio dropping next week as well. Like, all this stuff will come out, but it's gonna be one of those, I think, where I'm just gonna pop them out in the morning before I go downstairs and get breakfast, and then I'm just gonna leave my phone at home in my Airbnb, and I'm just
Wonderful.
going to be completely switched off from the world for a week, and I'm really looking forward to it.
I bet you are, mate. I bet there's something wonderful about that. When I went on my cruise earlier this year, I was like, I remember when I first went on my cruise, I was like, what? I don't get Wi-Fi on here. I can't see like what's going on my phone. And this was before I paid roaming charges because they were so expensive. So like you're away for a week and you're like, oh my God, like, I've not been in contact with anyone for a week. And when we were on the cruise, I was like, I'm not going to be in contact with anyone for about a week. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like when we got into port days, I had a bit of like mobile data and whatnot. Yeah, I'd go and have a look, see what's going on and whatnot. But it didn't really bother me, so I kind of get that. It'd be nice for you to have that family time, I imagine. And what a better time for you to have it than knowing that the card for a show that you're not going to be able to make is coming out. That would be the perfect way to just switch off from that. But guys, I will hopefully be here again. If Andy Quilden decides to say 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock, this was when the card will drop. I'll put a link up and you can all go and join the live. And whoever's there, you can drop me some chat messages. And I'm going to try it live for the first time and see how it all goes. And if it doesn't, I might just jump on, do a quick video anyway, and just give you my thoughts and upload that to the channel because I think it's going to be a good announcement. So, Dave, we've been going on quite a while here. Should we rattle through the rest of the card of what we've got? Because I think we've still got a few matches that we can give our thoughts on.
Yeah, go for it, mate.
Right.
Hit me with a match.
So, Kanji versus Debbie Keitel.
Yeah, really excited for this because I've never seen a Debbie Keitel match.
No, same.
She was on my first ever Rev Pro show at Your Call. Mm-hmm. She attacked Alex Windsor and Charlie Evans after their match and cut a promo. But I never saw the follow up from it. It was a show that I didn't go to because that's when I think 2022 I pretty much exclusively did Your Call, St. Neots and Stevenage shows. I didn't do anything else. And then last year I added the 229 to it. And this year I've added like Southampton and Sheffield to it.
Yeah.
To kind of complete it all. So yeah, really up for that. Always love a Kanji match. I'm curious to see how this plays out because the Cutthroat Collective and Kanji feel like they are not going to be far apart. Is Debbie Keitel there? Is she going to have any link to the Cutthroat Collective? Is she going to help Kanji defend against the Cutthroat Collective? Is she just going to walk away from it as if to be like, this is shit I don't need to get involved in? Like, there's lots of interesting conversation which comes out of just a simple match graphic. And similarly, we've got Anita Vaughn versus Lizzy Evo, haven't we?
Yeah, we do.
That is another match which I thought could be a contender for short match.
Yeah.
Not because I think that Lizzy would come out and squash Anita Vaughn, but potentially because there could be so much shenanigans from the Cutthroat Collective that Lizzy could basically spoil the match and spoil Anita Vaughn's moment, and it be like that very much be the directive. I feel like at the end of this show, we're going to have a slightly clearer idea of who the 5 women are that are going to be wrestling at the Copper Box.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to have all 5 of them, but I feel like we might have a slightly clearer indication of who the 5 will be, at least for it to be like, okay, we're definitely like Kanji's locked in, and so is Anita Vaughn, or so is Lucia Lee, or so is somebody. I'm curious, but I love the fact that there are 2 women's matches on the card. It is a very stacked card, so. And it's also a weekend where there are a lot of people that are not available because there's a Pro Wrestling Chaos show, is there? There's New Wave and there's Progress.
So
maybe it's not Chaos. Maybe I'm getting Chaos and New Wave muddled up. But there's a couple of big shows running elsewhere in the country that have got a lot of talent pulled for it. So it would have been really easy for Rev Pro to just book 1 women's match this week, and they haven't. They've stayed true and they've booked 2, and I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, there's a Chaos show, both women's and men's on Saturday. So I know because Lizzy Evo's in that, and I'm going to that show on Saturday. That's Saturday early afternoon show, and then they've got a show in the evening there. And I think actually looking at this card, Lizzy's the only one, I think, across both cards or Lizzy and Kanji, actually, because I believe Kanji's their women's champion. So both of them are on the card, and Lucia Lee is there. I know Danny Luna's there as well. So you've got those talents who are kind of around in the country. But on Sunday, I know it's Progress. They are doing the show, which is Luke
Jacobs versus Kid Lycos.
Lycos, yeah, in the main event. So actually, there we go. There was me saying earlier, we could have Luke come out and interrupt the main event. So that won't be the route we're going down, because Luke will be in London unless they do a madness and put OKU versus Dijak on, which isn't going to happen. If they put out, they wouldn't put that on first. But unless they did a madness, did that, Luke did his bit, drives that. Like, because I've seen that happen. I mean, look at Mills. I mean, I know it's a bit of a more contained, but I just don't see that happening, because obviously it's Progress's big match, and they're not going to risk it, are they?
Big match and Rev Pro's big match as well. But maybe Ethan does Luke's work for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Who knows?
But yeah.
We've also got Josh James and David Francisco that I'm really looking forward to, because for something that I've noticed, I don't believe it's a coincidence, but Rev Pro often book storylines to continue in the same towns.
Mm-hmm.
So the first Coventry show opened with David Francisco and Josh James teaming together against Reese and Rogan. And this Coventry show has a big heated payoff of those two wrestling against each other. I don't think this is the big heated payoff. I don't think this is the end of the story. I think this is David Francisco weaseling his way out of properly facing Josh James. I feel like Golden Boy Santos is going to be there. I feel like he's going to be heavily involved. And I predict Francisco's going to win, and it's not going to be the Josh James moment that I kind of want it to be. But I do feel like that will come just a little bit later on down the line. They're two people where we don't need to rush their story, because they've been in one another's orbit like for literally the entire time I've been going to Rev Pro shows. So it's always been something that gets dipped in and out of. So and it's something that doesn't need to be rushed, and I trust that it won't be. They've always got good matches together. I really enjoy them. I feel like this will be the best match that they've had that I've seen, because the character dynamics are that bit clearer now. It's no longer contender David Francisco versus contender Joshua James. It's heavy artillery versus the centerpiece. I really, really like that. I'm really looking forward to it. And I think both guys have done so well since basically all of 2024. They've really become part of, like, as big a part of the roster as anybody else. Whereas before, the contenders, it is by definition and by design a separate division. And so I feel like since they graduated from it, they've done really, really well to kind of lose that. They've not like, I want to phrase it right, because I'm not saying that they're losing the stigma of the contenders division, because there's no part of that. Like, the contenders division is really, really like a useful storytelling tool. Yeah. But they're getting the reactions that everybody else gets, rather than the reactions that the contenders get. They're getting the storylines that everybody else gets, rather than the storylines that the contenders get. Like, they very much don't feel part of it anymore. They feel like they are part of that roster. And I feel like the inclusion of Golden Boy Santos has added like a really nice dynamic to it, because Josh James is always going to be outnumbered. There's lots that can happen here. I just predict that it will be a muddied finish as opposed to the clean finish that people might be clamoring for. But then I just say, be patient, it will come.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, this is one of those feuds. I think in wrestling, you get two types of feuds. You get like the top level feuds, like your pay-per-view feuds, if you will, which I know it's a bit of a weird comparison to use for Rev Pro, but that's like your bigger events like your York Halls, your Crystal Palaces. And then you've got your TV, what I class as your TV feuds. And I think that's what this is. This is your one that will go on your regular events. They'll have matches at, like, Dave Francisco and Golden Boy Santos had the matches at, when was it? I went to, it wasn't Epic Encounter at Stevenage. What was the most recent one? Raw Deal. That was the one. I couldn't remember the name of it there. And I think this is one of those ones that features on, like, the more local cards, right? Like your Coventrys, your Southamptons and stuff like this. But I also think that's by design, because I think, like you said, this is one that in a year, I can see this being one of the big matches on a big card. And I think that's the right way to go about it. Don't rush the guys. Don't go from 0 to 100. One of the things that I think has worked really well here, and like you said, they've almost graduated into these more fleshed out characters, because as contenders, they're not, are they? Like, they're just, this is new guy who is here to contend and get in with wrestler. And that's the whole point, is they're there to get their reps in, build up, and all of that stuff, get that connection. And then you start to see it towards the end of their contendership, they were allowed to start having a bit more character. And as that comes in, and that's what, look, we come to Rev Pro a majority because we love the matches, right? That's a huge draw for me, is the actual in-ring. But I love great character work as well. I know you do. We've spoken about this a lot. And I think Rev Pro was subtly bringing it in with these guys and allowing Josh, like, a guy that size against a guy Dave Francisco's size. I mean, David's not a small guy, right, when you actually see him. But in comparison, he's a smaller guy. Josh shouldn't come across as the big baby face here, but he does. He's got this likable quality to him where I was like...
Look at the YouTube series that David Francisco did prior to their match in St. Neots before the Revolution Rumble. And him and Charles Samuels are literally looking at, how am I going to hit my running I don't know what we'd call it, like running diving drop kick, whatever we're going to call it. How do I hit that with enough force to knock a Josh James down and out?
Yeah.
You know, but they very much put the size of Josh James into that storyline. Like, they canonized it, and it does. It shouldn't work, because normally your big guy is the heel and your big guy is the bully in the situation.
Yeah.
But they're working it brilliantly, because David Francisco is the weasel.
Yeah,
and
he is.
Josh James is like the kind of can't quite get, like, he's not getting a fair crack of the whip. But when he does, he's got the strength and the power to beat Francisco. Although it is worth noting that Francisco beat him the last time they wrestled one-on-one, clean as a whistle.
Yeah.
So, you know, they've got so much history to their rivalry, and there's long-term story with every wrestler in Rev Pro and at least one or two other people, and I absolutely adore that.
Absolutely. And I love that Dave Francisco's been able to show more personality, because the guy is such a dick. He is such a dick. And I love it, because he's like that kid at school, isn't he? Who or there's actually this YouTuber that some people might have heard of. In America, it's this lad called Jack Doherty, and what he does, right, he's basically Dave Francisco. He's an annoying little shit, and he goes up to people in public and he, like, bullies them. Then as soon as someone squares up to him, he's got this big, like, 6'4" bodyguard. Like, I'm not even kidding, right? And he just steps in front, and he's like, stand there going, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Legitimately, this kid is about 21. I'm not a violent person. I want to punch her in the face because he's annoying as fuck. That is what Dave Francisco is here. He's the weasel, but he's got that. But also, he does have it in the locker that he can beat you. And I think that's where, for me, this continuation of this story is he beats Josh James, but he doesn't do it cleanly. He has to resort to tactics. So last time it was cleanly.
There's got to be
time
feet on the ropes again, isn't there? Because that's his dirty tactic. What I'd quite like is for him to try and do the foot on the rope thing. Whoever's reffing the match, whether it's Harv, Hatch, or Oscar, that they're wise to it, and they call him on it and be like, no, we know you, you cheating bastard. No feet on the ropes, and it be eliminated quite quickly. He's not going to be able to beat Josh James that way, but he'll just find another way to cheat.
Yeah, I mean, come on, it's not going to be Hatch then if that's the case, is it? I mean, the guy, and I love Hatch, he's a great guy, but He likes to just let them get on with it, doesn't he? So yeah.
I love the fact that each of the three referees has their own like personality and things that they are like in storyline, like good at and bad at. Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's little things that I love. Like I always laugh about. I always joke that like Oscar is like the guy who's trusted for like the big matches. He always gets like the big main event slots. But when there's more than two people, like him, he's brilliant at refereeing a singles match. When there's more than two people in the ring, he's got like all the authority of a supply teacher. It's like he just loses it all.
Yeah.
Harv is very much more kind of like Harv like stands up for himself and will like get in a wrestler's face if they give it to him. But he's also a bit sometimes where it's just like, oh fuck it, just let them do what they want let them get all this out of their system and then I'll start counting. But it's even then it's like he's got the body language and the facial expressions and the natural reactions of the crowds that be like, what am I meant to do here? Like just let them sort it out for a minute. Yeah. And Hatch is that kind of like battle-tested veteran of just being like, he'll let things go to a point and then he'll be like, no, enough's enough now. Come on.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they've
all got their different
that kind of teacher that's been doing it for so long where he's like, I've seen it all before. I know what you're going to do. I'll let you have a bit of it. But at some point, just, stop taking the piss.
I love that the maths teacher here used teacher analogies with every single one of those guys there as well. Love that. But you're spot on.
That is effectively a referee's job, right?
Oh, yeah, of course it is, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's basically saying that a teacher spends all of their time just managing discipline rather than actually teaching. Sadly, it is part of the job. But yeah, there is an element of in order for you to be able to teach, you've got to have complete control of the classroom. And that's the thing that teachers find the hardest to get. And I imagine that with a referee, their job is to enforce the rules, but also to like ensure the safety of the wrestlers and do all that of it. They can only do that if they've enforced the rules first.
Absolutely. And Dave, beautiful analogy. And speaking of unruly youngsters, that moves on to the final match on the card. Danny Black versus Cameron Khai for the the shot or the qualifier for the Cruiserweight Championship Scramble match. I mean, look, I think this is going to be a great match. Cameron Khai, like, that is what it is for me here.
I've never seen a Danny Black singles match, so I'm really excited for that. I've seen him 4 or 5 times with CPF in Rev Pro. I've never seen him wrestle a singles, so I'm excited for that. I think it's interesting because both you and I, we've already predicted that Cameron Khai is going to qualify for the Scramble match. We predicted it before this match was announced. That I mean, it's not like it's a hot take; like it's a fairly safe prediction.
Yeah.
But interestingly, when the graphic dropped, I noticed that there were comments online, comments in group chats where people were like, and even guys like All About Graps on Instagram who predict their winners and losers of every card. There's a lot of people predicting Danny Black wins this. So I think we're both going to say that we are predicting Cameron wins it, but there's enough people out there predicting Danny wins it that it's going to make it an interesting watch, not just an entertaining one, but one where the stakes are unpredictable.
Yeah, Dave, correct predictions aren't for everyone, mate. Like, I'm saying that with love and joke, firmly tongue in cheek. Look, if that happens, but I don't know when it is. But I did see that CPF have been announced for GCW.
GCW.
Yeah, so I'm not sure
for GCW.
I'm not sure when that falls, but that could impact again. I'll just see if I can find it now. Actually, I've got Twitter loaded up here. I saw that pop up early, but much like you, I wasn't ever sure if I've even seen a Danny Black match at all. Like, he's one of those names that I feel like must have seen at some point.
Yeah.
And actually, I have. So I've got my spreadsheet loaded. It was CPF
Southampton.
Yeah, Greedy Souls. Yeah, that was the one that I saw. Yeah, with Maverick Mayhew. So and looking,
just got after Joe Lando hurt.
Yeah, and I can see it here now. CPF, GCW, August 2nd, 4th, and 17th. So even if that does tie up nicely that you could have him. You could have him at Summer Sizzler if he was to win this match.
Yep.
You could have him at Summer Sizzler because it's a nice British a week.
Falls nicely in between, doesn't it?
Yeah, so he's got a week in. He would have a week in between that 4th day and the 11th, and then and so that is actually really nicely in the middle. It's and then he could go to America on the 4th because I imagine he won't be staying out there till the 17th. After that one, so go out on the 4th, come back, have Summer Sizzler on the 11th, fly out early that week. Yeah, that's it. It's
he wrestles on the continent, like in Europe, regularly. Like he's someone who it feels like he's doing really, really well out of being a bit like the British version of like a Jordan Oliver, in the sense that they're making independent wrestling, like they're making the travel work for them. It's like if you're prepared to go anywhere and everywhere, then you can get your name out there more. You can get more dates and make a living from this. And like fair play to him. Good luck to him. I'm excited. I'm excited for it because I always like seeing people that I've never seen before, especially when they've got like a strong reputation. And because Danny is like already like an established part of like British wrestling, there'll be a lot of people familiar with him. So it'll have like good atmosphere. I'm sure that the Coventry crowd will welcome him well.
Yeah, nice. And agree with, again, much of what you say there, mate. I think it's going to be a great match. Looking forward to seeing what he can do on a singles basis. And a guy I'm not massively familiar with, and much like you, I love it when I get to see someone new. I think we've spoke about it in text before. I put the question out there on Twitter a few weeks ago, not for the engagement that people might have thought it was, but it was really to find out like whether people would like to kind of, when someone new's coming along, do they go and do a bit of research on them? Do they wait? And he's one of those nice ones that for me is like, I'll just wait till I see him like on one of these kind of shows and have that. So I'm really looking forward to this match. Cameron Khai, I've loved him since the first match I saw in Southampton. I remember seeing his picture. I think, God, he looks really young and everything, again, really raw. And he comes out and he was not what I expected. I've been on the Cameron Khai hype train since then. I would really like to see him get his spot at the Copper Box. And he's another one. It sounds really weird, but I feel proud of because he's such a young lad. And you like when he appeared at
graft in.
Yeah, when he appeared at Royal Quest.
It feels like he deserves that spot on the Copper Box card in the sense that he appeared at Royal Quest last year. That was massive for him. Like, that's at the Copper Box as well. That's a big crowd. It's, this is a lad who doesn't have a cage match profile, but has wrestled for All Elite Wrestling and wrestled for New Japan Pro Wrestling. Like, that is pretty incredible. So I feel like he deserves a spot on the Copper Box card. He's at every single Rev Pro show, whether he's wrestling or not. He's always there, putting a shift in, setting up the ring, putting the ring down afterwards, working the merch. Like, just an all-round good lad. Got loads and loads of time for Cameron.
Yeah, so for a second there, I was like, when did he wrestle for AEW? But then I remembered, obviously, the high-stakes match. So,
the scramble match.
I was like, I hope he gets this spot here. But that rounds us out nicely to the end of that card there, Dave. So,
yes, mate, yeah.
A fun
I feel like
show
we've
coming
gone
up.
really long today, but I feel like it's kind of like being 2 podcasts in one, right?
It has, and I think a lot of that is because I was going down memory lane with Global Wars, and I know I'm not going to get there. It was so much fun talking about it because Doncaster's been one of those venues that, because it's so far away, until people start going there, I don't really have anyone I can check because I don't know many people that's gone to those events. And so to be able to start having friends who'll go there and experience it, they might not have the same experience I have for obvious reasons, but it will still be somewhere that they've gone and they can at least understand. And it's
for sure.
So much fun getting to talk about that. So appreciate all of your time this evening, my friend.
No problem at all. Always a pleasure, mate.
Yep. Until next time, Dave, we're out of here.
Yeah. See you later.